Press and the Co-Star, our official newspapers, and also our bulletin board in the municipal building. I'll take a roll call. Ms. Sharkis? Mr. Mitchell?
Here.
Mr. Blasio?
Here.
Mr. Meyer?
Here.
Mr. Forte? Here. Mr. Lindsay?
Here.
Mr. Fierro?
Here.
Councilor Levis? Here. Mayor Buckfuss?
Here.
And Mr. McDermott and Mr. Gomez are absent.
Okay, welcome to our meeting. Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this, according to the agenda, we'll go right into the...
Let's go into a workshop for this evening's meeting. This is continuation of the hearing of Eastport LLC. Continuation from the April 15th meeting date. We accomplished quite a few things last meeting. I think this evening, the outstanding things that we're going to be talking about are planting buffers, compliance with the TDRC report. I think we're going to get, I hope we will get into site circulation, some traffic issues. We did have an issue with the affordable housing. It was at least a representation that it was contained within the developer's agreement. I don't think it is, but I'm sure the applicant's not going to have a problem with getting into some portion of that, and that's a condition of approval. I think we worked around some wall details last time. Basically trying to make sure that we were limiting the number of bedrooms in the unit. I think we're going to hear some things about that. We don't think we've heard anything about signage as of this point in time. I know that there were some, at least in one of the graphics, some small sign bars. We want to find out all signage where that's going to be located. That's the things that I think we did resolve. As I said, I think we did have a resolution or commitment that we're going to review a number of limitations to the bedrooms. I believe that we also have some correspondence with the marking some additional documents where I think it has been narrowed down that the variance for parking is 7 spaces. I think we'll hear something about that. Hopefully we'll hear some justification as to why they are entitled to that. As I said, we want to give us some revised drawings where we're basically removing some walls, adding some locations. There's a commitment for the applicant to agree that the garages must be used for parking. I think the other, I just want to go through some of the conditions. It's not intended to be exhaustive of the things that I think we've already agreed to that we may not have to spend much time with. We know that the applicant agreed to separate metering for the units, underground service. They agreed to providing no serve letters. I think where we left with regard to the removal of the utility pole is it really isn't something that the applicant can do on their own, but they will attempt and document that they're attempting to secure approvals from that from the appropriate utility, and that's the one on Main Street. I think they are committed to carrying over the architectural features from Main Street to the 6th Avenue facade, things like the, I think we talked about the shutters, the eyebrow elements, and those types of things. There was discussion that AC units would be on the roof, that there would be no habitable area up in the rooftop. They agreed to follow recommendations and consult with the Shade Tree Commission for plantings on Main Street. They were also going to work with the engineer and write his recommendation that what we were going to be talking about for buffers and buffer areas were mature trees. We didn't get into that. But there was some discussions as to why they didn't want to do arborvitae, because they want something smaller, less bulky, but longer back. They agreed that to the extent that they could, that they would be replacing a lot of the gravel areas to green grassed areas. Lighting, they agreed to be that there would be no storage for neighborhoods, neighboring for residential properties. Roof drainage, they did make an agreement that would go into dry wells so that the driveway would drain into inlets at the front of Eastport Lane. There was a recommendation, and I believe they did commit to it. We might clear that up, that there weren't going to be balconies on the 6th Avenue rear, if you know. this evening, what I'm hoping to be hearing from is their traffic person. I think probably a large amount of testimony is going to be coming through by going through the planner's report, a lot of the engineer's report last time. I hope we're going to be going through the planner's report, things that are agreed to, things that they want to discuss. We did hear from, we did have a hard stop last time, from many people from the public. I think we've heard those. I'm not trying to characterize all of the comments, but I think in large part, including traffic safety considerations, circulation in that area. So we're going to do the usual things. I'm going to close out the workshop. If there's no other additional questions from the board, we'll swear in the witnesses and remark the additional exhibits that I'm aware of at this point in time. If the applicant has some additional exhibits, we'll mark those and then I'll try to get it on the way. Any questions from the board?
Before that, we want to address the meetings.
Yes, and before that, just for the record, Mr. Loomis is now here.
Yes.
And can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the April 15, 2024 meeting?
Motion.
I'll second.
Mr. Sharkis?
Abstain.
Mr. Caponi?
Yes.
Mr. DeLazio?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Mr. Forte?
Yes.
Mr. Lindsey?
Yes.
Mr. Fierro?
Yes.
Council Lennis?
Yes.
Mayor McCluskey?
Yes. Okay, let's get right into the applications.
Anybody who's going to testify, I think they're going to testify, might testify, have something. I guess we'll all stand. You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you give before this board will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Usual instruction, everybody can sit down. Usual instructions that I give you before you start speaking, well, at the time you're ready to speak. State your name, spell your name for purposes of the records that we have, so we know who's speaking, okay? Follow the directions of the council. The additional documents that I have, we're up to our last marking of A13. I have A14, which I will characterize as an email thread between the applicant's counsel, borough planner, and I think referencing the borough engineer, who I believe we came, I believe the conclusion was that it's a 7-space parking variance that was needed.
Yes.
Mark that as an exhibit. A15 is the Main Street parking plan. So that is dated as April 29th, 2024. A16 is document prepared the 20th Grasso, text 3 sheets. It's basically a revision to A9. A17, 3 sheets. These are colorized renderings of basically of the document that was marked in the site plan for page 3. Any other exhibits, council?
That's all for now.
Okay. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Michael Arbino Jr., here for the applicant. How's everybody today? What we have tonight, first of all, I'd like to stipulate that we agree with the conditions that your council set forth. So I think those are off the table right now, except for some of the things that the engineer wants us to go through. Secondly, we have tonight to testify Mr. Dan Caruso, who was here at the last meeting. He's made some revised plans, so he's going to testify. We have Mr. John Hay, who's a traffic engineer. He's going to testify. And we have Brian Brzezinski, who's the architect, who will testify about the changes that were made to the plans. And we also have the two partners in the transaction, members of the LLC, who will testify as needed. We had planned on pulling Brian first to go through the architectural, but Mr. Ray might have to come to another meeting with his partner. So we're first going to put on Mr. Caruso to explain the changes, and then we'll put on Mr. Ray, who's our company.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay? They must stand up.
So he's qualified with something.
Yes.
Anything changed with the qualification? No disciplinary action since last meeting? Okay.
You didn't put the practice in there. If you would, you testified at the last meeting that you and Mr. Giglio were the engineers on the project. And
Yeah.
you testified as to the project itself, the overall project itself, and so on, correct? And the board and the applicant had asked you to make address some changes to the parking plan on the premises, is that correct?
Yes.
And could you just go through that with the board, what you did?
Yeah, the change that we made was on the Main Street. We originally had 4 parking stalls and a real long loading and bus stop area. We were able to revise it to add 2 additional spaces, so we now have 6. And the loading area was revised and closer to the corner. And we also proposed a larger radius curving on 6th and Main Street. It was originally 2, and we went to 4, and the radius went from a 5-foot to a 15.
Is there anything else you changed to the plan?
No, not sorry. No, that's it.
Okay, we agreed, you heard the attorney outline, the agreements we made with the board, from an engineering standpoint, your agreements. Okay.
Yeah, we have to move on.
Comments, concerns from the?
That's
Can you just reconfirm exactly what those changes were, because you went back and forth with what?
We went from 4 to 6.
right. As I originally stated,
Yeah,
retail parking went from 4 to 6,
okay.
and the loading zone got slightly smaller. The radius went from 12, or actually, we got it labeled as 15, and it dropped to a 5-foot radius.
Pushing out.
This is before.
So can you explain, is there any part, when a bus is in that one spot, any part of a bus picking up, so I'm thinking of people leaving 6th Avenue going to Main Street, the bus is truly, would be in the sight line, not for a very long time, but would be there a moving van? Is this, the best space for a loading zone to be on the corner like that? Is that the best?
There's,
You gotta identify yourself.
yeah, Greg Capaco. There's, on the north side of Main Street, heading towards the bridge, there's 4 bus stops from 16th Avenue to the bridge. 2 are 7 feet, and they're on the corner. 1 is 10 feet, and 1 is 20 feet. Ours would be 25 feet, which would also double as a loading zone. So we're actually bigger than 75% of the existing bus stops.
Right, so I think the bus is probably less of the issue, meaning it's a quick pull over and stop. When you call something a loading zone, can you explain what that means? Is that a moving van that's going to be parked there, or a large U-Haul that could be there for an entire day, blocking the turnoff of 6th Avenue?
Again, in today's day and age, there's so many, Amazon, UPS, most of those trucks would easily fit. And as of now, I don't believe there's another loading zone, not one, on the entire strip of Main Street in Belmar.
And the intent, Greg, while we're on, what you spoke up, the intent would be for the store owners along Main Street, for them to have loading, people who can come along and drop off goods to the stores and so forth. Is that correct?
Yes.
Do you think maybe the loading zone should have a time limit?
Yeah, we have no problem.
Absolutely.
I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, half hour.
Absolutely. Yeah, time limit is, all the parking should have time limits.
Yeah, there's no problem with that.
That would help. It's just, my thing is, I would want to keep people moving in and out of that spot. I wouldn't want to see a moving van
No,
specifically.
it's not the
U-Haul.
intent for
There would
somebody.
be, U-Haul should be used for the driveway and in the roadway, so it should be a little more clearly labeled.
We have no problem.
Amazon deliveries, bus, things that are in and out, okay, fine.
And that's the intent. The intent would be for deliveries, not for somebody to be there more than 15 minutes.
And is there something you need to get, anything approved with New Jersey Transit to share that space?
We do, we will. The other bus stops are small.
And I would recommend 10 minutes. I think that's plenty.
Then it'll be clear.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Jim Morris, Borough Engineer, ORIS.
Yes, sir.
So, Mr. Crusoe, with regards to this new location for the loading zone, can you, have you had any dialogue with the regulatory agencies with regards to this? I.e., what's their required site triangle? Because you're showing a site triangle on the original plan. My concern is that cars that are going to be, cars or trucks, that are going to be parked in that new prescribed loading zone would impede the ability of a site triangle.
Yeah, we haven't reached out to them yet, so.
So, but, you know, from a safety standpoint, and maybe your traffic engineer can provide some additional input, but I'm very concerned about cars trying to make a left out of 6th Avenue and not being able to see cars coming from, you know, heading south. So there's a site triangle shown on your site plan, but the revised plan does not show the site triangle. If you overlay the two, the loading zone is in the site triangle. So I'm not sure that this is the best answer to try and create new parking spaces. So I just, my concerns are safety and making sure that we, you know, we address that as well.
One question relates to the same
Yes,
thing.
sir.
Why can't we have a bus stop and a loading zone?
We can, but again, Mr. Mayor, when we had time for the public hearing last week, you know, it seemed that parking for the retail was a concern. So I spoke to you know, I spoke to my engineers about it to see if there was anything that we could do to add a space or two. Again, if the board is more comfortable with the original, we're happy to do the original. We just were trying to, you know, come up with a solution that was voiced by the concerns of some of the public that spoke about it.
Well, you're trying to squeeze some more parking spots out of Main Street, basically. That's what you're trying to do.
And again, I don't know that we necessarily need them per se, based on the type of retail we're hoping to put in. It was just, again, we heard what the people said, and we thought what would be best for the overall site. It could be one space. Again, the bus stops on Main Street, again, there's two 7-footers, a 10 and a 20-footer. If we even added one parking space, we'd have 45 feet from the corner, which would easily be out of the site triangle, and plenty of room for both.
My concern is, though, you're presenting this, and we don't know what the DOT's position is on the bus stop. So you're asking us to consider something, and we don't know, you haven't reached out to them yet about their position on the bus stop. So aren't we really premature? Shouldn't we hold this off until you find out all the details that we need to find out about the bus stop? And second of all, there's no spaces for commercial, for your commercial establishments. So, I mean, I think that's another issue that, you know, you didn't address, but, you know, I don't think we should be taking part of Main Street and squeezing in 2 additional parking spaces while taking away a bus stop. Because we all know what's going to happen with the loading zone, too. It's going to be just what happens on the other corner. Trucks are going to double park on Main Street, and they're going to make their deliveries. So, you know, I think you need to solve that problem, but I think you really need to be, you need to come to us here with the approvals. Having said, I contacted
Mr. Mayor.
I'm speaking, please.
No,
Can
you're
I
bringing up
finish?
a topic that is completely wrong.
Can I
That the
finish?
site plan
Can I
statute
finish?
completely allows
Mr. Chairman, he's out of order.
I'm not out of order because you're speaking wrong. You're not.
Well, that's right. You have a
My position is very simple. If you're gonna shorten the bus stop, I'd like to see something from DOT that says they approve that you can shorten the bus stop. Do you agree with that? Do you agree that that's something that you can provide to the board?
No. First of all, I'm speaking with my client. Secondly, this board, no board in the state of New Jersey has a right to say, we want to see something approved from the state, the county, or some other government agency before you vote on it. You do not have a right to do that. You have a perfect right to say, this is a condition of approval.
And we have a perfect right to say no.
You have a perfect right to say no. And we have a perfect right to take it from there, too.
Thank you.
Doug, do you have any input on that comment?
We can make it a condition of approval. If the mayor's not satisfied that that condition can be satisfied, one way or the other, we don't really want to go. I'm sure the mayor's concern is nice to have it up front. I agree with this. We know that has to be, that can be a condition of approval. But in terms of whether or not that's satisfactory to the board, that's up to the board.
Well, I just have to add to that, it's not a matter of whether making a condition of approval is satisfactory. It's otherwise satisfactory to the board. You have a right to make a condition to go ahead, but you don't have a right to say no because we haven't seen what the state has.
I thought that's what I said. If I didn't, then I agree with you. I thought that's what I said. That's fine.
Our engineers would like some input.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Morris, ORIS. So, with regards to taking this new proposal and creating a hybrid between the original proposal of 4 spaces, maybe eliminating a space, I think it's important if that were to occur, the site triangle needs to be respected. Whatever the state is going to require and whatever our borough ordinance requires with regards to a site triangle, I would want the board to see where the state has guidelines with regards to what the site triangle requirement is. That should be shown on the amended site plan with the layout for the loading zone and the bus stop so that the board can see how that all meshes together. To me, that's something that the board should ask for before you vote if you have any concerns. Of course, as Mr. Kovats has indicated, you can make a condition of approval that they get all their, any permits, and if there were to be any modification of that layout along Main Street, then they'd have to come back to the board and amend their site plan approval. So those are the options, but I think it's not too much to ask that we have the DOT requirements for site distance on the plan, unless Mr. Crusoe is going to indicate that the site triangle that he's showing, which appears to be labeled as a 25-foot site triangle, meets the DOT requirements. Or Mr. Ray.
So we'll confirm with the site triangle with DOT on that, as far as parking layout, whether they go to additional or to the original, is up to the client and that we need the site triangle requirement.
Thank you.
Christine Bell, Borough Planner. I would just say, as a, the applicant has this amended proposal to add additional parking spaces along Main Street to reduce the amount of spaces they require a variance for. But if they are unable to provide those 2 additional spaces based on input from DOT and, the site triangle, I would just suggest they request a variance including those 2 spaces, or at least one of them, if they're not able to put the 2 additional spaces there.
I would agree, BC, I would agree, just eliminate 1 space and take it from there, make the loading zone out of the site triangle, because it's clearly inside of it based on your other plan, and come up with what the now variance would be 6 requested, we go down to 6 instead of 5, and then we could actually review that as the board.
Jim Morris, I think what Christine was suggesting out of an abundance of caution, leave the requested variance at 7. so that if they can't get it, then they don't have to come back to the board, or you don't have to advertise for a new hearing to go back for an additional variance spot. That's up to the board on how you want to handle that. But, I tend to agree with that, that, you know, you can approve the documents, or if you choose to approve the application, and it would, you know, the resolution would say, you know, for 7, but plans would show that you would only need variance for 6.
I would recommend that, it's a safer course. If you end up not needing to have the variance, don't simply set it on that.
Okay.
If you don't have the variance, you need it.
Amenable to that?
Further testimony. Just to make sure.
That's fine.
Amenable to that? Okay. Proceed.
Is there any questions of Mr. Caruso?
Additional questions?
I have no further questions.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
John, you want to come up? The board recognizes that.
Is he? Okay. You've been here before as a
I have.
traffic engineer?
It's been some time.
Okay. Just for the record, when were you licensed?
Originally licensed in 1979 as a professional engineer. I've got 50 years' experience in the traffic engineering field, which includes parking consulting. I'm a principal with McDonough & Ray Associates, 1431 Lakewood Road, Manasquan, New Jersey.
Okay.
Accepted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And you're here tonight as a traffic engineer
And a parking consultant.
and a parking. Sure. Tell us a little bit about your review of the project and your opinion on the traffic design and the parking at the premise.
Okay, well, I was here at the last meeting when this was discussed in detail, and it became clear to me that parking was a very significant issue. I live in the neighboring town, I've been here for 25 years, I understand that. I'm here in the summer, I know what goes on in town in the summer. And so what our engineer, Mr. Caruso, attempted to do, listening to the concerns of both the board's experts and the residents, was get 2 additional parking spaces on Main Street. And in doing so, the bus stop and the loading zone was pushed further to the corner, and I will tell you that with that particular design, definitely the bus stop and the loading zone is in the site triangle, no question. So if we need to get it out of the site triangle, we need to remove, and I think Mr. Capalco said, just take the 2 parking spaces that we wanted to add, take them off Main Street, slide the loading zone down so it's out of the site triangle, and we'll do things that way, and we'll ask for a bigger variance for parking spaces. From a safety perspective, I agree with that protocol, that way of attempting to solve the problem. I would note that one of the things that I noticed when I went up and down Main Street and I canvassed the existing bus stops on both the east and the west side of Main Street, all of the bus stops are in a site triangle for any of those side streets. So I think all my client and his engineer were attempting to do was to design something that was consistent with what they saw on Main Street, and that's what they were trying to do. Having said that, Mr. Capalco has agreed to go back to the original design. We're only going to have 4 parking spaces on Main Street, not 6, and we'll relocate.
Board said we couldn't. He said.
We're going to go back to the original.
Okay.
We're going back to the original plan. We're going to get the loading zone and the bus stop out of the site triangle. Outside of that, as the board knows, 7 parking spaces are being added, angled parking spaces along 6th Avenue. Again, that's consistent with what is found in the north part of town. There's angled parking on every one of the streets, probably from 10th Avenue to the river. There's angled parking on each and every one of those streets. We're attempting to make our plan consistent with what driver expectation is in this part of town, and so the angled parking has been provided to maximize the amount of parking that we can get on 6th Avenue, and there are 7 parking spaces on 6th Avenue. So if we go back to the original plan, we'll have 7 parking spaces on 6th Avenue, we'll have 4 on Main Street, 11 parking spaces, yes, 11 parking spaces on 6th Avenue, angled parking spaces, 7 and 4, it's 11 total, and 4 parking spaces on Main Street, and the loading zone out of the site triangle. And that's, based on my discussion with my client, that's what's being proposed tonight. We're going to get the loading zone and the bus stop out of the site triangle. I've just been consulting with Mr. Caruso and with my client in an attempt to try to, say, solve the parking issue. We're trying to get to the point where we have a very minimal parking variance. I'm not sure we're going to be able to accomplish, that. If my understanding is from what Ms. Bell said with respect to how to calculate the parking, we cannot take credit for existing parking spaces that are on Main Street and on 6th Avenue. And if we have to subtract them from the parking that we're providing, I don't think we're going to be able to get to the 13 parking spaces that are required for the commercial space. We're probably going to need a variance. We're trying to do the best we can to maximize the parking, make sure it's safe, and I fully endorse going back to the old plan and get the park, like I said, get the bus stop and the loading zone out of the site triangle. I think that's the best way to go.
Okay. So the variance will be for 7 parking spaces, correct? Is that, am I understanding this correctly?
So we will have 11 on 6th Avenue, 4 on Main Street, for a total of 15, and then we have to subtract, I think there are 2 parking spaces on Main Street, and maybe Jim or Christine can correct me, there are existing 2 spaces on Main Street, and I think 3 or 4 on 6th Avenue. But whatever that number is, will still require a variance.
You still require, Jim Morris, you still require a variance. There's a total of 7 existing parking spaces
Okay.
between 6th Avenue and Main Street. The
Okay.
requirement as calculated, so you basically, those 7 spaces have to get recreated. You're meeting your parking demand for the commercial based on what you're saying you're proposing, but you're missing the 7 that you took.
Got it. So we will need a variance, but technically the 15 spaces that we are providing will meet the commercial demand of 13 with a surplus of 2.
Current parking spaces that you're doing, would you consider them now more commercial in front of the existing, what's there, retail, Main Street, or is it more residential in front of someone's, well, not in front of anybody's house, but?
I think it's a combination, mostly commercial. It seems like the auto shop there has got some cars out on the street, if I'm not mistaken. My cleaners used to be across the street. I used to park on 6th Avenue when I went to the A&B cleaners. They've since moved into the new building on Main Street. So I think it's a mixture of, there's probably some residential parking in those spaces, but it's probably more tied in with the commercial space.
Maybe you could review and see how many are actually, they're more commercial than they are residential. Maybe all 7 are.
Can I just ask one question before you get started?
Sure.
Just tell us, as far as the residential component of this project, we are compliant with parking then, is that correct?
Yes. And if I'm not mistaken, there was a discussion at the last meeting about the garage space being not used for storage, and it has to be a parking space. And the residential site improvement standards of the state of New Jersey do consider a garage and a driveway combination as 2 parking spaces.
Okay, thank you.
And that's really all I have. I'm working with Mr. Caruso and Mr. Capalco to attempt to address the parking situation. We're very aware of how critical it is, especially during the summer. And we tried to do the best we could to squeeze a few extra parking spaces in, with the understanding that the other bus stops along Main Street are already in the site triangles at those intersections. We thought it would be acceptable, apparently it's not, so we're moving back from that plan.
Well, we're constantly trying to improve.
Yes,
We're
I
trying to
understand.
improve what we've got.
Absolutely.
It's less of an issue of the bus stop, it's the loading zone.
Yeah, I agree with Mark. The loading zone's more important.
Yeah, because the bus is only there for a minute or so, yeah.
That testimony was about as clear as mud to me in terms of what actually is going on with commercial parking. I mean, you're saying 11 at one point, and then Mr. Capalco was telling you, no, it's 7. What is the actual?
It's 11.
Do we have a
11 on-
diagram of what? we
It's
could
on the
look at?
plan. It's on the plan. It's 11 on 6th Avenue, and now we're back to 4 on Main Street. That's it, that's the plan. That's it.
Is it?
The 15, just to make sure the board's clear, what I heard, I think the engineer also said, the 15 is technically compliant for what you're constructing in this area. Is the fact that you're, in turn, 7 of them were existing, so you don't get credit for those.
That's exactly right.
With those 7, I think you should review the plan or maybe the existing conditions, or someone else can testify. Are those 7 currently already commercial for maybe the property
They're not-
that it exists.
They're not designated as either commercial or residential. They're not designated, and I was just trying to answer the question as to what I thought, who was parked there. And because I didn't observe people getting into and out of cars, I couldn't tell you exactly. But they're adjacent to the commercial property.
They're adjacent, that's what I was getting at. They're adjacent to, they're currently adjacent to commercial. If there was a retail store, that's what they're being used for.
Correct.
So we're just turning them and reusing them. But they still lose the credit, I understand, it's still a variance request. But the 15 is compliant, correct?
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a question? I'm a little confused. The Eastport redevelopment agreement that I read characterizes those spaces as public,
Correct.
not commercial, not dedicated to this particular project to cover the commercial requirements. Yes or no? Or am I mistaken?
Well, public parking would be.
Anybody.
Yeah, anybody, if you were.
All right, so what you guys are saying, the way I understand it, is that this is dedicated to the commercial requirements for this project. And it's really not. It's public parking. There's 7 of them out there. There's 7 spots out there now without your commercial project in place. So I mean, how is it that those become characterized as you're satisfying your commercial requirement when they're public spaces? I mean, you could take public spaces anywhere in the city, up and down Main Street then.
When we renegotiated our redevelopers agreement,
Why don't you just identify yourself?
Greg Papa, when we negotiated the redevelopers agreement, as part of the redevelopers agreement, we had to put in Main Street commercial space as part of the project. That's what's in the Seaport redevelopment area. When we signed the agreement, in the agreement it lists that those spaces could be used for our retail customers. Also in the Seaport redevelopment.
Because I didn't read that.
Also in the redevelopers agreement, as long as there's public parking within 500 feet of your project, which there is because the municipal lot is to the west, that also could be considered for your overflow for your commercial parking.
Where is that in here that it's dedicated, that it could be considered for your satisfying your commercial requirements? I don't see it. I'm on page 8. 12 diagonal parking, public parking spaces facing on the west on, it's so small here, on 6th Avenue that will be available to the public. Part 2 says 5 public parking spaces will be provided on Main Street that will be available to the public. To the time limit. So where does it say that those are dedicated to
Well,
satisfy
that was the
commercial
intent when
requirements?
negotiated.
Excuse me?
That was the intent when it was negotiated.
It's not in here.
It was the intent.
I don't understand, there's no, I mean, you have a requirement to have parking for the residential, but the commercial, you're allowed to use the public parking spaces that are already tight, and there's, I mean, it just doesn't seem rational. It's not in the agreement here that I read anyway.
Can I read something from your redevelopment plan?
Yeah. Where are you?
This is on your development plan,
Yeah,
page
page
2003.
2003.
It was updated in 20.
Yeah.
And it originally states, parking, public parking.
What page you on?
This is on page 7. Supplemented by on-site or off-street private property parking is intended to satisfy the overall parking requirement for the land uses within the Seaport Village redevelopment area, and to reduce the need for on-site parking on smaller lots that contributes to disorganized traffic patterns. Residual land area on the redevelopment parcels and existing properties to be rehabilitated can be devoted to landscaping, outdoor, etc. The intentional reliance on public parking requires that such parking be available and conveniently located to businesses within the Seaport area. It goes on to say, based on the Seaport Phase 1 conceptual plan, public parking is proposed in Seaport Plaza during the initial phase of redevelopment and in a Seaport Plaza parking deck, if necessary. I will read the rest of it, but it's clearly indicated that when the plan was first introduced, that public parking be considered part of your commercial requirements and or your residential requirements.
So, Mike, if you go to page,
Please identify yourself.
oh, sorry. Christine Bell, Borough Planner. If you go to page, I believe it's 18 in the redevelopment plan, section 4.1.3, it's the parking requirements. And that outlines the methods in which parking can be provided, either on spaces on site, on spaces on other properties owned or under the control of the developer, or publicly owned property under the control of the borough, with prior agreement being made through a developer's agreement executed with the mayor and council for use of public spaces located within a zone which permits the proposed uses either contiguous or within 500 feet, walking distance of a primary pedestrian entrance to the site being developed, providing the required spaces by designing the redevelopment so as to create net new on-street parking spaces. A combination of the alternatives. So that is how parking is allowed to be provided in the redevelopment plan. So the net on-street spaces are what we're using to calculate the parking they're providing.
But
Thank you.
Okay. I just wanted to indicate that the plan originally goes to public parking, not to commercial property parking and so forth. It recognizes that public parking is to be considered as part of the application in the redevelopment zone.
Through the chair, if I may, Jim Morris.
Yes, yes.
So, the counselor here has indicated or read from the part of the redevelopment plan. And Christine Bell has adequately, talked about how it's calculated. And actually, when you go to the redevelopment plan, page 19, where it talks about a credit for, weekday use and what have you, 50% credit can be accomplished if there's public parking in the area, but you have to meet conditions. So, such additional parking may be provided by providing on-site spaces, and it goes on to speak to the fact that if it's within 500 foot, it says, provided that the required spaces on the property owned or under control of the developer, or publicly owned property under the control of the developer, with prior agreement being made through a developer's agreement executed with the mayor and council, for the uses of these public spaces located in the zone which permits the proposed use either contiguous with or within 500 feet of walking distance of a primary pedestrian entrance to the site being developed. So I looked at that and said that they don't meet that requirement. So in addition, they can provide spaces by designing the redevelopment so as to create new on-street parking, which they're doing, but they're short. They don't have enough parking to account for what was previously existed plus what they're required to provide. So that's how we got to the space in place where we're talking about variance. With regards to the redeveloper's agreement, I did see that with regards to public parking spaces, and if you give me a minute, I did print out a copy of that requirement. Sorry for the long pause. So on the redevelopment agreement, it stipulates that on page, I believe it's between page 7 and 8, that originally they were going to provide 5,000 square foot of retail. They've reduced the amount of retail down to 3,960 spaces. In the redevelopment agreement, they were required to provide 12 diagonal parking spaces on 6th Avenue. They're providing 11, but they're also 1,000 or so less square feet. So that's I believe it's actually a ratio to ratio that works. And then 5 public parking spaces on Main Street. And again, they have less retail space, so they're providing 4 instead of 5. So I think the alignment of what they're proposing is generally consistent with the redevelopment plan. And as much as when it talks about public parking spaces, it says 5 public parking spaces will be provided on Main Street that will be available to the public, 30 minutes requested parking from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., no other time limits. So that was what was contemplated in the redevelopment agreement. I think that is what the applicant is proposing with regards to the time limits. I'd ask that they confirm that.
Yeah. Is that in fact what you're proposing?
The Main Street will also have time limits? Main Street also have time limits, not just the diagonal parking?
It's only Main Street.
That is one time.
Only Main Street.
Oh, all right.
Thank you for us. Are we all clear on that?
So can we just confirm, just to boil this down as simply as possible, right? What is existing and then what is being proposed and what the delta is? So existing on 6th Avenue is how many spots?
I'll give it a shot. I think Jim said 7 were existing between 6th Avenue and Main Street, correct? 7 existing?
So on 6th Avenue, how many are existing right now?
5.
5, all right. And how many are we going to?
We're going to 11.
Going to 11.
5 to 11 on 6th
And
Avenue.
that's on 6th Avenue, okay. On Main Street, how many are existing?
2.
2,
And we're going to 4.
we're going to 4. And that's Main. So there's 7 existing, which, correct me if I'm wrong, are excluded from the equation.
Correct.
So then we have 15 proposed. So the delta of 8.
Yeah, there's a net increase of 8 public parking spaces. Is that correct?
And, but the requirement is
13.
13, so that's where the delta for 7.
So actually,
That's where
technically
the
it's
variance-
5.
It's technically 5, but we've all been using 7.
Right.
So, in an abundance of caution, if you approve a variance for 5 and somehow or another, it's supposed to more. The
So they don't have to come back? Okay.
Yeah, the true variance, by my calculations, would be 5. And
Okay,
I believe that Christine.
I defer to Jim on the calculation.
gotcha. But I see what you're saying. I
Yeah.
see what you're saying is give 7 in case we need it, so they don't have to come back.
Right.
Okay.
Doug, are we good? Makes sense.
All clear now?
Makes sense.
All clear?
But, if you want to open it up for just Ray to the public to see us leave.
I apologize for that. My business partner had a medical issue this morning, and I've got to try to run out to Jackson and cover his meeting as well. So,
Any other questions?
Yeah, we're going to discuss the traffic portion of the report. Can you do that, please?
we have 14 townhouses proposed, and basically, it's in my traffic report. Based on the ITE data, that will generate 7 peak hour trips during the morning peak hour and 9 peak hour trips during the afternoon peak hour. And when I talk about those 7 and 9 trips during morning and afternoon peak hours, I'm talking about the amount of traffic that will be generated coincident with the highest peak hour of traffic flow on Main Street going to town.
What about 6th Avenue?
Well,
That's
6th
what the
Avenue
drive
traffic, when 6th Avenue hits Main Street, it goes either north or south, so it's included in the Main Street traffic flow.
Have you taken account the fact that there's a private school there
Yes,
and that there's
Yes.
a lot of traffic?
yes.
Where is that in here?
St. Rose?
Where do you account for that in this report?
We are going to generate such a minimal amount of peak hour traffic. Let me explain. The Institute of Transportation Engineers, the NJDOT, and Monmouth County, they have standards for when you need to do a full-blown traffic impact study. It's 100 peak hour trips. We're generating 7 and 9% of that threshold. So the industry protocol for doing a traffic analysis, if you will, is 100 peak hour trips. We're generating 7 and 9 respectively during the 2 peak hours, there's really no
Do they
need
have
for a
any-
full
do they
traffic
have any-
impact study. Excuse
Do
me?
they have any, I know that's the standard, but do they take into account where there are schools?
Yes.
Is that,
Sure.
and is that the same
Yeah,
standard,
yeah,
whether or
I'm
not
familiar with
there's
St. Rose.
schools?
It's been there for a long time. I've observed the morning and afternoon organized chaos for 15 to 20 minutes, just like every other school in the state of New Jersey. It's
You'll be
not any
adding to
different.
that organized chaos, right?
Yeah.
How much will you be in, is
What's
the
that?
question. I guess what the mayor's asking you is,
Well-
how much to the chaos that exists in the morning and in the afternoon are we gonna add to this?
Exactly,
I
Okay, is
would,
that
exactly.
I would anticipate the 7 and 9 peak hour trips. Most of them will probably head up toward Main Street, not even go down past St. Rose, past the elementary school. Some traffic may head down toward the beach. I used to like to ride to my office down along the beach instead of taking Main Street, so it depends on how nice the day is. Could be a couple of extra cars.
Now, this concept of peak hour, what is the hour? Did you pick a specific hour?
It generally occurs between 7 and 9 in the morning and 4 and 6 in the afternoon. It's somewhere within that window in the morning and in the afternoon. And we have done peak hour traffic counts in the past for other projects along Main Street, but because this project was so minimal in terms of the number of units and the traffic generation, I did not update the counts, but I'm very familiar with the summer traffic, and when the bridge goes up on Main Street, traffic backs up all the way back through town. I'm very familiar with it, because I've sat in it.
I have to ask this question. Your study was done when the bridge was not stuck in the upright position, correct?
Actually, yeah, the bridge was not stuck in the upright position, but since I didn't do traffic counts, I don't know when the DOT is gonna get done with this, but I hope it's soon.
I have one other
That
question.
bridge has been a problem for years and years. I thought they fixed it about 5 or 6 years ago.
Every 6 years they fix it
Yeah,
again.
that's.
I'm sorry,
I don't know what's
Mr.
going on
Mayor, you
with
got.
Yeah, it is the second paragraph on page 2 talks about the traffic impact generated by it says 4,300, but I understand it's less than that square foot of
It's a little bit
retail
less
space.
now, right?
And I'm just curious, you make a statement here, there's an expectation that there will be significant walk-up traffic from the downtown area and other residences in the area.
Sure.
What is the basis for that statement?
Because of the population density in the area and the fact that people are in town doing business, and when they park in a public spot, they may go into town, they may pick up their dry cleaning, they may go, walk down to Walgreens or to get a cup of coffee at the corner, there are people that come into town. I was one of them, that parked and did several different things after I parked my car once.
I just find it curious
Yeah.
because having been here for so long, I don't, anecdotally, I don't see significant people walking up to Sixth
I
Avenue.
see a lot of
on,
pedestrian traffic on Main Street.
in the Sixth Avenue area. Between
Usually,
5th and
there's
6th?
more pedestrian traffic down toward 8th Avenue and 10th Avenue, but there's pedestrian traffic up in this part of town.
So that's just mine. I still don't know what the basis is of that statement. That's
guess.
just your opinion.
And I've lived in the area for 25 years, that's my opinion.
Any other questions for the board?
Did you take seasonality?
Yes.
Is this peak like the worst case, 10?
That's a general number that would probably be true for summer, winter, spring, or fall. It's just, generally speaking, in a residential, residential traffic generation is coincident with what we call the home-to-work trip in the morning and the work-to-home trip in the afternoon.
But the commercial addition to it?
Again, the commercial is going to generate some additional traffic during those peak hours as well, but I do think, it could be a lot of pass-by traffic too. One of the reasons why these businesses on Main Street and Belmar and Avon are suffering now with the bridge being up is because a lot of these businesses depend on pass-by traffic, which is there already, passing the site, and they stop to make a purchase or get a sandwich at Jersey Mike's.
If they had someplace to park.
Yes, sure.
How do you take into account that the peak or seasonal demands for parking is greater than what?
Absolutely, the seasonal demand is.
So what does that go
great.
up to?
Well, usually the municipal lots, especially on Friday and Saturday evenings in the summer, when Heinz is busy and the other restaurants are busy, the lots are full.
I mean,
Or
with
pretty close
respect
to
to
being
this,
full.
with respect to this proposed development,
Well, what we're trying to do, if you look at what we're trying to attempt to do here, we're increasing the public parking supply from 7 to 15. We're doing
well, what is
it-
the required amount? What would be the additional amount of parking required in the
Apparently-
seasonal? Because I'm looking at an aerial photograph here
You've
that
got-
was
okay.
supplied by the applicant. I got 19 cars in the parking lot.
Yeah, but those are for businesses that won't be there anymore. The
One.
Robinsons has. Well, they generate some parking. Mr. Capel, I think there's also the automobile facility.
Currently, since I've owned that property.
Greg, why don't you just have that?
Greg Capalco, again, developer. Currently, since I've owned that property, besides our current tenant, which is the Robin's Nest or Jersey Shore Auto Detail, it seems that lot has basically been used by everybody, from every store that's, from Jersey Mike's, through the barber shop, through everything that's in that plaza, and again, people coming over here to the municipal building during the day, teachers and people that are coming in and out for St. Rose. So whatever parking's in that might not necessarily be for the tenants that are on site. It's been whoever actually has been parking on that property.
Well, it's gonna go from 19, but you're only adding 8, right? So where are all these automobiles going to go?
Well, again, the retail mix the retail that's currently there may not be the retail that's there in the future. What I spoke at the last meeting, I have an 8,000 square foot commercial piece on Highway 71 that's next to Mr. Shrimp, and the tenant mix in there, they have 11 or 12 parking spaces in front, and those 12 parking spaces serves that tenant base well. And as a landlord and a developer, it's important that if you want a tenant to stay in business and do well in the community, you put the proper tenant mix in there. And that would be my partners and I goal going forward. Again, if we put in a tenant that needed a lot of parking and they couldn't park, that tenant would go out of business.
Well, I noticed the commercial spaces that are next to you and just north of you have parking for both tenants and commercial on site.
They have a mix. They also have a mix that's shared with their residential base. But again, there's 9,000 square feet of commercial in that building, and we have slightly more than a third of that square footage coming into ours.
Not the one on next to you, though. That's not that much commercial, is it?
Yes, there's 9,000 square feet commercial in the Jersey Mike's building. Okay, we have under 4,000 in ours. And again,
but they provide it on site.
again, I don't know their exact numbers, but based on that alone, they would need 27 on-site parking spaces for that, plus their 24 apartments. So I don't believe they have 70 spaces on site at all. They allow a mix, and they also use.
They're painted on each parking space has either a number or the commercial use name on it. You can't interchange, from what I noticed.
Now, again, I didn't study what Mr. DePep did next door, built a fine project. I'm just stating that for our needs, we believe that the by code parking of 13 parking spaces will work for the commercial that we'd like to put in.
19 cars on the lot.
Different type businesses.
Can you just walk me through this scenario? So you have your angled parking on 6th Avenue. Okay, now I'm coming to the store, one of your new stores that you're going to have on the property, and I cross over 6th Avenue and I can't find a parking space. So now what do? I go to the light and I can either go left, go down River Road, and try to find parking around there, or I go right. Okay, now I go right, I go to East Street. Well, I can't make a right on East Street because that's a one-way coming towards 5th. So now I have to go down to D Street. Okay, and now I have to make a right onto D Street. So now I have to come up 2 blocks to 6th Avenue to get into your angle parking. Okay, so that is definitely going to be increasing traffic for people who want to utilize those commercial spaces, because they're certainly not going to turn down 6th Avenue off of Main Street and then hook a left into the angle parking, which I know they do in some of the other angle parking spots, but that's really a safety issue, I think. So you'd agree, we're going to have increased traffic going down 5th Avenue to D Street, up 6th Avenue to try to find that parking. Now, of course, if there's none of those 11 spots are available, then, you know, either they're going to keep going around or they're going to go across 6th to try to find parking there. So you'd agree, though, that whole area on the east side of Main Street and on the west side of Main Street is going to see much more traffic if they want to utilize those commercial spaces that you're proposing, right? Because, you know, those spots most likely are going to be taken, you know, unless we have a very, very short time span on, you know, like 15-minute spots.
And again, we're willing to limit the time from 9 a.m. till 6 p.m. on those spaces also.
What do you mean 9 a.m. to 6 p.m.?
Well, from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., we're willing to go with 30-minute parking on the 6th Avenue spots.
But my point is, though, it is feasible, though, that we're going to see more traffic coming down 5th Avenue, all the way to D Street and across and up 6th Avenue. I'm asking your expert.
Okay.
I think right now.
The mayor's asking Mr. Ray.
Oh, Mr. Ray.
I mean, we're going to see that. When you say
Maybe a
your
little
professional
more increase,
opinion.
but you will see increased traffic. I can't deny that, but all I can say is, what I said at the outset of my testimony, every street in the north end of the borough has angle parking. This is what drivers expect. And you adjust your patterns accordingly. If you don't think you're going to find a parking space on Main Street, you will go down the local streets to kind of loop around to get into the angle parking from the right direction. But there's angle parking on literally every street in the north end of town. This is what drivers expect. This is the way the north end of town is set up, and this is what my client is trying to be consistent with.
The difference is when I go down 8th Avenue and I can't get a parking space, I can make a left. And I can go on E Street and I can come back up and around. When I'm on 5th Avenue, I can't make a left, because there is no left on E. So I have to go down to D, now and make a right. So you're essentially going to be increasing that traffic. It's not comparable to the other streets.
I think it is, but I'll leave it at that.
It's not.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Morris. So I think listening to the board and hearing what Mr. Ray has put forward in terms of his work completed, investigating the traffic on this, I had a thought with regards to the parking that previously existed on the commercial site that, for better or for worse, was being used by the public. That creates we don't have a real feel of what the parking deficit's going to be. I know we can't require the applicant. He was never required to provide public parking on his property. He did it. I guess he just never really tried to enforce any type of restriction of allowing the public to park on his property. But that lot is used continuously by various people, a lot of them with the school, parents dropping off and picking up and what have you. So the question is, and I think it was raised, have we looked at the parking deficit as it might be impacted by the controlled chaos, as Mr. Ray indicated? Because it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse with regards to when the school transitions or transfers. So I would leave it to Mr. Ray if he would be able to provide any additional information with regards to that. And in that same vein of thought is, Mr. Ray has indicated that he's looked at the traffic generation from the site and indicated that he felt it would be de minimis impact, I believe, or however you phrased it, Mr. Ray. But for the board's information, have you looked at the level of service for that location during peak hours? What is 6th Street?
Level of service is F in the summer. We're all stuck, especially when the bridge goes up.
So we're taking a level of service F and we're
Not making it significant.
we're taking away the parking spaces that
there will not be a measurable impact on that level of service F condition in the summer from this project. You won't be able to measure it and say, oh, I think there are 14 new townhomes and 3,700 square feet of retail space.
But you haven't done this, you haven't done the study to evaluate the level of service?
Jim, the threshold is 100 peak hour trips, we're not even close to that. I explained that. It doesn't fit the ITE, the Monmouth County, or the NJDOT protocol.
Oh, I did hear you explain it, but I think the board is saying they have concerns. So with that, the board may want you to do a little more background investigation with regards. I'll leave that up to the board. What I'm trying to do is relay to the board, or I should say to you, what I'm hearing the board say with regards to what you might be able to do to help alleviate or address some of their concerns with regards to loss of parking that was taking place by the public on the property, whether it was legal or illegal or not, not inappropriate or appropriate, and the fact that we've got an intersection that most likely is operating at a poor level of service. Maybe they want to understand how poor level it's working at and what's the real feel of the impact of this development. I'll leave it at that, Mr. Ray, and you can guide your client accordingly.
He can guide himself.
Well, wait, after that.
Paul?
Can I just say two things and then ask for a short? One thing is ask for a short. One, we shouldn't be penalized, and my client should not be penalized because it provided unauthorized public parking at the site. I mean, he had a perfect right to develop this wherever he wanted within the borough ordinances, and it's come a long time. Because the prior owners had it, and that was, anybody who's been down in that area of town snuck into that lot if you were looking for a spot and you couldn't find it. But I don't think he should be penalized because there was an open parking space there as far as the parking demands that are required by the ordinance and per the agreements. With that, can we take it 5 minutes?
If I could just add to that comment, and I want to make it clear on the record.
Right.
The board is not penalizing anybody. I
I
want to make it very clear on this record. The board is not penalizing anybody, but the board is questioning, in light of the fact that you need a parking variance, what the total impact of that is. I think they're accepting what Mr. Ray is saying, but also, he says in his report, it is consistent with parking provided in other locations. The difference in this instance is that in this location, again, it's not a penalty, it's an observation that right now, you're going to be providing, to the best that you can, with the variance accepted, the on-site parking. What the board is looking at is a broader picture, which they can, without penalizing anybody, saying, we know right now that this also accommodates parking, obviously, in the area. And again, I commend Mr. Kapalko for that, being heavy-handed, putting chains up or bulkheads or those kinds of things. But it's a fair characterization, it's a fair observation on their part that parking is going to be wanted, except for the Robin's Nest, which is no longer going to be there. But obviously, other people have used it. Where are they going to go? I think that's not a
With all due
penalization.
respect, I don't think that somebody could have a parking, an open area that's used for parking by anybody, and come in for development, and somebody turns around and says, well, there's 15, 16 cars that park there, we've got pictures of that. That's, somebody allowed them to do that. Maybe if he knew this was gonna come up, he'd put up chains and wouldn't allow it to begin with.
Well, within his right to do it, but it is an observation that
I
this
don't
is
think
the
it's,
reality.
for the record, without getting into argument with anybody, for the record, I don't think it's legally appropriate observation.
It's in your submission. I didn't take the picture. This is in something.
I know that.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
what I'm saying
I'm just
is-
saying I didn't take the picture. I saw it. Okay.
Mr. Forte has a,
Yeah.
I have a question for you. On 6th Avenue, you propose, is it 11 public parking spots?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, I live a few blocks away. When I come down 6th Avenue, and I'm at 6th and E, there's a sign there that says "Do not enter." So how do you reconcile the public parking if there's a sign there from maybe 8 in the morning to 3 while the school's in session 5 days a week? How do you're telling people not to enter, and yet you're designating 11 spots as public parking?
Yeah, I don't understand the question, sorry. I'm sorry.
On the corner right by the church, St. Rose Church,
Okay,
on the corner of East Street and Sixth. There is
Okay.
a sign, a portable sign, that says, "Do not enter."
But
That is there for most of the school.
If I may,
Okay, is it a-
in all fairness, I live on Sixth Avenue, and that is pick up and drop off.
right, that's
It's
during
not
the
on
St.
there.
Rose pickup and drop off.
It's not on there.
Right, that's what I was trying to get to, I didn't understand, but you're correct here. That was my understanding.
Okay.
It's only there, it's portable, and it's only there during pickup and drop off for St. Rose.
Yeah.
Now I understand.
I know they drag it out at 7:30 and put it up at 8.
They do that in Avon at the elementary school too.
Council asked for a break. Is there any objection to council taking a break at this point?
No, we have no objection. We're going to take a 5-minute recess. Health break. Bill, we have is there any additional testimony you
Yeah.
want to offer at this point?
Yes, I would just, like Mr. Ray, we heard, a good word that indicated, and I asked Mr. Ray, just to summarize, do you think adjourning this meeting and you doing an updated traffic report would change the numbers at all substantially?
Not substantially, again, you know, the way summer traffic volumes are out here, if I were to go out and do traffic counts each day in July or August, there might be 1,000 cars going through the intersection of Main Street and Sixth Avenue, and with our project, there might be 1,005. I don't think you would see a significant difference. I could do it, but I still think it's a waste of time and energy, quite frankly. We all know what the impact's going to be from a project as small as this. There's going to be an impact, but it is going to be de minimis, in my opinion.
Okay, with that said, I think we're still trying to get to the standards, whether it's C1 or C2, that you need to prove, correct?
Well, I don't think we're
On the
there.
variance?
I don't think we're there yet, but.
Okay.
Okay.
The only variance we're down to is the parking, correct?
That's what I.
I mean, we haven't gone through the planner's report, we haven't gone through the TRC report, but you're going to provide testimony concerning the basis for your relief, either C1, C2, or from, correct?
Well, we don't have a plan tonight, we might have to come back for a plan.
Okay.
Jackson.
Okay.
They got carried.
Okay.
He's ready, he's going to continue with this?
Okay. Continue.
I have no more questions of Mr. Ray. I think if the board has any more questions, he just advised me that he doesn't have to run, so he could be here for the very much.
Delightful.
They're done in Jackson, they got done earlier, I should have went there first.
Well, given that, we will hold the public questions and comments till the end as per normal.
I don't know, I know he has some other folks here, we should have some testimony on them.
Because you have to justify your
Okay.
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 Brian, you were here last month,
Yes, I was.
and you were sworn in and gave your credentials.
Yes, it's Brian Brzezinskis, BERZINSKIS. I'm a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey. I'm the owner of Bradford.
Nothing's changed since last month?
Nothing has
We
changed.
accept it.
Still here.
Okay.
Brian, you were asked to make some revisions to the plans, and some of the boards and the planners' concerns with regard to this.
Yeah, so in our last meeting, obviously, there were a couple of conversations that we had about the architectural drawings, things related to the bedrooms, the windows, the aesthetics of the exterior. So in reference to those comments, we made a couple adjustments on our plan, and I do have a copy of the plan here that I also made additional copies if we want to pass them around. But I'll highlight what exactly those changes are.
Comment. It would have been nice if we received these before the meeting.
Of course.
For the purpose of the record, this is
We're
the exhibit that was
working hard to do everything that we
16,
was asked.
so it's basically revisions of A9.
I think that puts us at an advantage in terms of
Well, I could go over every change, because what we're talking about is somewhat minimal to an effect. So currently, right now, alongside me as part of this exhibit A16 is a revised sheet A1, which was provided as part of the original architectural set.
You'll, hold on just a second.
Go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. I just passed all of them.
You just passed out A1 and A7, right?
A1, A3, A7.
You guys got
I have A1.
We don't have it. Let's do it out there, still got it. Let's check it.
It's got A1 up.
Michael, do you have a copy of the record?
That was our question to you.
Yeah, we're all set.
only got one full plan. Yeah, we can.
Okay, everybody set? Proceed.
All right. So going back to his earlier reference, this is part of Exhibit A16. The first sheet that we're talking about is sheet A1. That was part of the original architectural submission. To highlight the few changes that were made to this plan, if you look at the proposed first floor drawing on the far right-hand side, previously there was a door and a wall to allow the recreational room to be separated near the back of the ground floor. That wall and door has been removed as per our previous conversations at the last meeting. So now the recreational room is completely open to the foyer and the stairwell on the ground floor level. Going up to the second floor, the only adjustments that were made here are relationship to the front office space, which again previously had a set of doors that would allow access into the office space, but the doors have since been removed and it is now more of an open space. And then finally, on the back of the second floor plan, there used to be a slider door to a Juliet balcony that was along the rear property line. That has been removed and replaced with just windows as opposed to a door. That was all of the changes that are highlighted on sheet A1. Now, moving forward to sheet A7 as opposed to A3. When we were in the last meeting, there were conversations about how the floor plan of the building that was in the back versus the building in the front along Main Street differed from each other. In those conversations, I had mentioned that on the first floor plan of the Main Street building, that because there was a retail component along Main Street, that there would be no recreational room on the ground floor of the first floor level. So if you notice the first floor plan of the Main Street building number 1, the first floor layout only includes a garage, foyer, stairwell, and access elevator up to the additional floors. So there is no recreational room on the back end of the ground floor there. Instead, when you look at the second floor plan, you'll notice there is a small recreational room at the back side of the kitchen, which is along the Main Street facade, which is where the access out onto the balcony that overlooks Main Street is located. Other than that, this is the same floor plan with respect to the bedroom count, bathroom count, square footage, everything is similar in both buildings. It's just the displacement of the recreational room because of the retail component on the ground floor level. And now finally, going to revise sheet A3. This again was part of the original architectural submission, but due to the conversations that we had at the last meeting, this includes 2 changes. It includes a revision to the middle elevation, which is along 6th Avenue. It was a continuation of some of the architectural features that were located on the front of the Main Street building that now have been incorporated with the windows, the louver awnings, and such other similar aesthetic aspects on the front portion of the building that abuts and looks at 6th Avenue. And then lastly, the other additional changes on the rear property line elevation, which is located at the bottom of sheet A3. That's the removal of the sliding doors of the Juliet balcony and the installation of windows as opposed to the doorways. And those were the only changes that were incorporated into this sheet of the plan set.
Christine Bell, Borough Planner. I just would like you to clarify for the record, on sheet A7, while you mentioned the recreation room and the office, neither of those spaces have doors, correct?
Correct. Similar to what we had talked about previously in the last meeting on the other floor plans. This also, the office space includes no doorway openings, and you'll notice the recreational room that's located towards the back side of the second floor also has no doorway openings. It's completely open to the rest of the living space.
Okay, Christie?
That was the only changes.
Questions from the board?
I'd like some time to look at this. I'm really upset over the fact that we just got this tonight. There's nothing on your plan here that shows what it was before. So obviously we have to go to the package that you gave us before and look at what it was, right? So, and obviously, we're not working here in a huge space, so it would have been nice to be able to sit in an office and look at this at our leisure, do that, but of course, here we are.
Net, you're giving us everything we asked for.
Yeah, so I basically covered and highlighted the changes that were made. Those were the limits of the changes that were made in the drawings.
Thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions from the board? Doug, do you have any questions?
Again, is there, walk us through, I'm looking at A7, proposed second floor on A7.
Yep.
So these are the buildings that front on Main Street.
Yeah, so Main Street would be located towards the bottom of the page because the garage and the entry points are all located on the private driveway.
Do you have a separate drawing for regard to those that are behind that?
Yeah, so the sheet A1 is the original
That's
back building.
That's where I'm lost. We don't have enough copies for me to see.
There you go.
That's right. So A1 was part of the original submission.
Okay.
That was the floor plan layout for all of the units that are on the building number 2, which was the building further away from Main Street.
So then on this area here, that's fronting on the lane.
That's the lane, and the driveway access is on the lane. This is the rear property.
Okay, and so you confirm that there are no balconies overlooking.
We removed the door to the Juliet balcony and replaced it with a window.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So what would be the opening where you remove the doors to the office areas?
Just completely open.
Now, what is the opening, like width?
The width?
Width and height, I mean, you have
Yeah, so the diagonal of the opening is 5 feet wide.
5 feet.
That's the entire length of the wall.
I'm looking at A16 and comparing it to A17.
Yes.
Okay, on the proposed first floor, I don't see any difference, correct?
On the proposed first floor, the difference is in the location of the foyer. There used to be a doorway and a wall that separated the foyer to the recreational room.
Okay.
That has since been removed. So now it's completely open from foyer to recreational room without any doorway.
So you just took away the door, basically.
Correct.
Second floor, you took away the door.
Correct.
Third floor, no change. Let's see. Oh, this was the one we didn't have.
Correct. A7 is the one that now reflects the movement of the recreational room from the first floor behind the garage to the second floor behind the kitchen because of the commercial use on the main street.
Now, A37, what am I comparing that to in the prior documents that you gave us?
A3.
Let's see what I have. So what's the difference here?
So the two areas of difference are on the lower elevation, which is the rear property line. There used to be a series of sliding doors that opened up to a Juliet balcony. Those have been replaced with windows. So there's no balconies along the rear property line.
That's gone, that's gone.
Yeah, every unit had one previously, so every unit was replaced with windows.
And that was my question, and the balconies were removed.
Balconies were removed, that is
Thank you.
correct.
Didn't we mention something about doing something on the 6th Avenue side?
Yep, so now the elevation towards the middle, the introduction of the awning detail that was similar along the Main Street elevation was carried above all the windows that are located down the 6th Avenue side to introduce some consistency from Main Avenue wrapping around the corner down 6th.
You carry the design elements that were on Main Street around the side.
That is correct.
Provide more aesthetically pleasing facade.
And nothing changed on
The back building, nothing changed, except the windows for the back.
You didn't have to put in where the metering was, did you? I know that was an issue that we had last time as to the location. No.
No, nothing.
But we're still committed to the, look around here.
I believe it was the alleyway.
The lane.
The lane.
Okay. Thank you.
I just want to comment, I appreciate that it's not just a door removed, but it's the entire wall. It's just, you know, people like to do their own work, and just slap a door in a 2'8" opening, so putting it on an angle like that, and really opening it up prevents future TA wires from making that a bedroom. Thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
That's all I have at this witness.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and those upon two members of the board is to review the full set of drawings. Good. I'd like April to have one, and I just need to know. Thank you.
That's the only one in the middle.
There you go. Well, that moves.
Can't leave you over there.
You didn't have any.
That's all our witnesses for tonight. If the board wants to bring any testimony, I spoken to a planner. I believe the board can proceed with this application without a planner. The board does not plan to testify. We can bring in planning testimony.
Is there anything more you could do this evening by way of discussing
Yeah, I think we can go through the
signage? I mean, go through the planner's report. I think we pretty much briefly the engineer's report at that time, but I'd like to go through the planner's report.
Do we have,
Let me just state one thing. Let me just have Greg testify.
Sure.
In regards to signage, yeah, Greg Chapak for the record. In regards to commercial signage, we do not know if it's going to be 1, 2, or 3 tenants, but any leases that we do with any potential tenants, they have to go by boarded signage ordinances, and it'll be up to them if they're doing anything out of the ordinary. They'll have to come for variance.
And I noticed in one of your drawings, I forget, please forgive me for not recalling, but there was a detail that looked like it's a lentil above the doorway for the commercials. Is that generally where you're proposing on placing them?
And again, it's subjective at this point because again, we don't know if it's 1, 2, or 3 tenants.
Okay, we're not expecting any monument signs. We're not expecting any. I mean, the signage that you have, and again, I'm not trying to tell you one thing or another. It's basically going to be on the building.
Yeah, it'll be on building signs, and again, they'll have to go by the borough sign ordinance, okay, or they'll have to come here.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll start with the letter.
Christine Bell, Borough
Yes,
Planner.
Christine.
I think I can kind of speed this along, if you don't mind, Mike. But kind of just going through my letter, we've discussed the parking. I think there's still some outstanding issues in terms of the variances that regarding the parking that we'd like to hear from the applicant. The land use requirements, at the last meeting, they had agreed to provide additional buffering to comply better with the buffer requirements. They just showed these new architectural plans which remove the additional 2 bedrooms. So this change, removing those extra rooms, reduces the bedroom count to 3 bedrooms for each of the unit, so complying with that ordinance, with the intent of that ordinance section. They had at the previous hearing agreed to comply with the borough's sustainable design checklist in the Seaport redevelopment plan, and that all plantings would be compliant with the design guidelines of the Seaport redevelopment plan. Then just my additional comments, I think really the only outstanding thing, they had agreed at the last meeting to provide a masonry block trash enclosure instead of board on board. I have a comment that they should provide testimony as to compliance with the borough's affordable housing requirements. And I think that they're proposing to pay into the trust fund.
Correct.
But that's really it, their development.
And as far as, Greg, the board on board trash enclosure, we agreed at the last meeting to
Mason.
make it.
Ms. Bell, just to clarify, because I have this as a note from last time, once they removed the walls and that those rooms that were too large to be considered, well, they were considered a bedroom, now that there's no doors and they're definitely considered 3-bedroom homes or townhomes, there's no parking. The parking, residential parking is compliant, does not require variance.
So the Seaport redevelopment plan only requires 2 spaces per unit regardless of the bedroom count. So they have provided 2 spaces for each residential unit. They did agree at the last meeting to deed restrict the garages to only be used for parking, or to require, a car be parked in the garage. So really the only outstanding issue from my letter is kind of the commercial parking.
I think I read my note too fast and didn't ask the right question. Also, so let me rephrase that.
Sorry.
So there was a note that says the total number of bedrooms was 5, whereas a maximum of 3 bedrooms is permitted. So that variance is gone.
Correct.
That. Of course, 3-bedroom with 2 spaces is better than a 5-bedroom with 2 spaces.
Correct.
Compliant or not. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine.
Can I ask a question, Christine, about the sustainable checklist that you had highlighted, section 5.3? If I remember, there's like a store also that's supposed to,
Yes.
do we have that? I haven't seen it.
I have not seen that. They had agreed to comply with it, but that is not
So
something I've seen.
we don't have that.
So that's something that I'm sure, if the board chooses to act favorably on this application, in his resolution, Doug would, make that.
Make that a condition.
part of a condition.
You have a problem?
No. I should say, no, I don't know.
Thank you, sir.
And to address the one I said, the affordable housing, was mentioned by the plan.
Yes, I stated before, we will, the agreement, I think, provides that we make it.
I don't think it does, but
Whatever the town
we will
requires.
comply with whatever the ordinance requires.
With the development fee ordinance.
Correct.
And can we define what exactly that fee is? Has it been?
I think it's determined.
It's in the ordinance.
Approval. It's a formula that somebody should,
It's like 1.5% equalized value of the residential and 2.5% of the commercial.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
That's what the rebump's rate.
Okay.
So we'll reflect that in the
Yes, and we'll comply with regard to the ordinance requirements, and we'll give them the opportunity to pay the funds, as much as we provide them, and use it supplement, so.
What else we got?
Anything outstanding in the TDRC report that we have not yet covered?
No, I think we've covered everything.
Okay.
Is there anything in the engineer's report we haven't covered?
Well, through the chair, Jim Morris, I do believe that the engineering report was, I checked my notes. The report that I prepared, they covered either through testimony or indicated that they would comply with the engineer's report. With regards to the TDRC report, I don't think that the applicant really provided a thorough overview on the outcome of that report and how they're trying to make every effort to comply with that. So I have a copy of that if you wanted to walk through the details as to how that you've.
I thought between the architect and engineer, we covered that.
Well, there are a few things in here I didn't quite understand, or maybe I missed them, so I apologize. So with regards to, I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but I do believe you covered most of them. But with regards to the theme of the project, the TDRC indicated it really should, exterior design should be along the lines of the seashore colonial theme that fit the neighborhood.
Brian? We left them here last time.
So yeah, again, this is this is Brian Brzezinski, architect. So located on the original submission of A2, there was an architectural rendering showing the exterior aesthetic of what we were proposing with the buildings. Obviously, we took into considerations of the comments that were made at our last meeting as far as wrapping some of these elements around the corner. We had done an effort to redesign areas from between the TDRC meeting and this meeting in order to add some architectural features as well aesthetically to the 6th Avenue side, because that was one of the comments in their review letter. And then, obviously, whenever we design something aesthetically, we're trying to conform to the rest of the Main Street neighborhood look. So we've been thankfully involved in some of the other projects up and along Main Street and wanted to continue a somewhat similar aesthetic that married those buildings while also standing out as this being a little bit more residential in use because of the way it's configured with the interior lane. So that's why we came up with all the aesthetic values for both the back building as building number 2 and then the front building and building number 1.
And in your opinion, it's going to provide a seashore colonial theme?
Yes.
Have you thought about colors in terms of the palettes that you're talking about?
So we did have a rendering that we brought to the last meeting. I don't know where that is, but that was kind of the palette of what we were looking for when we presented it.
Very next one.
April has the original.
Yes. They got some little ones.
With regards to the Main Street, are there breaks in the building line?
Yeah, so we did cover that in the last meeting. There was a colored elevation we did that kind of broke down the different variations, both along the streetscape sidewalk on the main level, as well as how it started to step back on the elevation going up the building.
Some of the things that I know that we've covered, talking about electric being placed underground. One of the things that the TDRC had was solar features. Was there going to be any solar features to this project? Not at this moment, right?
Not for now.
Not at this moment, okay. We talked about the AC units along the streetscape, loading on Main Street, which you're providing, use of pavers throughout the project as a favorable design choice. So you're going to have, are there pavers proposed for the interior? Or is that
Yes.
going to be asphalt?
No, no, the street will be asphalt, but the driveways and walks will all be paved.
Okay. Retaining wall on Sixth Avenue with landscaping would soften the look of the entrance driveway. I believe that you provided testimony with regards to that,
Yes.
correct? And then there was additional discussion about landscaping and lighting and stormwater management, which was provided. And believe it or not, 5D traffic study should be submitted to the planning board and the borough engineer for review. We do have a traffic study. I think we've talked extensively at length about in terms of whether additional information is required, so I won't go into further detail with that. And then one of the last things was more consideration should be given to commercial parking, to on-site parking be added for commercial tenants angled on Sixth Avenue. And I think that the applicant provided testimony with regards to that. I think they predominantly covered my engineer's report along with the items that were referenced in the PDRC report. So I have nothing further at this time. If the board has any questions.
I think these will be for Brian.
Brian, you want to get back?
Mr. Long has a question.
The walkway between the buildings, do you know how wide that is offhand? I don't know if that's for you or for someone else, but I just want to make sure that there's enough room there. If we're planning on putting the utilities there, is it wide enough to?
You're talking to not the two buildings on this property, but the adjacent building on the
Yeah,
adjacent property?
between the adjacent building,
Yeah.
like here's Mike's building and this
Right.
building. I think there's a walkway that you're planning on putting the utilities in there?
I think it does.
So the engineer's drawing shows 5 feet
Okay,
to the property line, yes.
sorry.
No problem.
And then just two quick ones about the commercial space. The depth of the commercial space is about 30 feet, is that right?
Currently 30 feet, yes.
30 feet. And then what kinds of, you know, I don't have a commercial space that I use, but like what kinds of businesses do you see? Is that a viable space that businesses can use? What kinds of businesses do you see possibly there? And
We're potentially going to be looking for businesses that have a low traffic count. That will work, because for a number of reasons, okay? But not just for the site particularly, but my partner and I both own mixed-use properties throughout, this town and other short towns, and that's one of the fortes, one of the things that we do. We try to find a good tenant mix that works in residential, so it works for everybody.
I'm assuming it'd be tough to, I guess what I'm asking is, I'm guessing it'd be tough to get like a commercial kitchen or something in
Correct.
there. So like a restaurant's probably not gonna be viable there.
Correct.
Anything else, Brett?
I think that's it for me right now.
Any other questions from the board?
The only thing I'll ask is, can we just review whether it's, I don't know what time we need to review this, but can we just review, just to summarize, all the conditions and the variances we're asking for the board?
Usually we do that when the applicant is completed. I can give you a.
Okay, I'm sorry.
or what-
That was my
or where
question, I
you
guess,
are
more so
right
the
now.
timing.
I can give you where you are right now if you want.
Yeah, we can wait until the end, until,
Because I mean, sometimes what happens is the applicant says, okay, we're gonna do more. I attempted to do a little bit of that at the beginning of the meeting during the workshop as to where you were. I think, our planner did a very nice job as to where they are with regard to the outstanding issues. As to things that will either be committed or came up this evening.
we can wait until.
Okay.
Yeah, we can definitely wait until the applicant has finished up, it's not a problem.
Yes,
A couple of questions following up what Brent said. I'm wondering what kind of, you have 1 to 3 units. What kind of businesses would go into 3 units there?
Well, the square footage is under 4,000 square feet, but again, like over on my Highway 71 plaza, I have a flower shop that occupies about 2,000 square feet. Small customer count, they deliver mostly. I have I have a sporting goods store that rents from me, but it's not an actual retail spot, it's more of a wholesale spot. Again, low customer count that come there. Architect's office, there's a Body by Lena, which basically it's an appointment. She does, I guess, eyelashes and waxing and stuff like that.
I mean, like 3, who would take 3 units?
You mean all 3 of them?
You mean like
square
Well,
footage?
Yeah.
A floor covering company might want to come in and basically take all the square footage for the place. Odds are it'll probably be 2 or 3, it probably won't be 1. But again, until we literally put it out there, we're really not going to know at this point in time.
I have one more question. Looking at the aerial view, or looking at the plans, what concerns me with this parking area is that if you get a big snow dump, you're not going to be able to use a truck with a blade to get that snow out of there. And I haven't heard you mention anything about updating the snow. In other words, something like this, the way this is planned out, like I said, you can't use a blade, and the only way you can get that snow out of there is with a truck, bobcat, skid steer, bucket loader. Do you have any provisions? Would you, let me say it this way, would you be amenable as a condition of approval to have a contract with somebody that has the equipment to get rid of that snow in case of a dump?
Brett, you want to address what they did at Westport? Which is a little bigger but similar.
Well, Westport,
Why don't I identify Brett for?
yeah, Brett, you're using for River Ave, Belmar. Westport, we use front end loaders and we actually stockpile the snow, so it worked actually very well.
So
We, I
would
mean,
you have that as a condition of approval?
in reality, what you were asking, like, I guess what you're saying, like, how are you gonna get a truck in and out of there? Is that what you're asking?
Well, what I'm saying
Rather
is,
than backing
you have a
out,
problem getting a blade in there.
I agree.
It's gonna push everything back, that's the.
Well, I mean, in reality, you're gonna need some sort of small, like Bobcat front end loader. You could also have a plow too, and what we did, for example, Westport, we actually had a plow, we're gonna plow it, and banked it, then we've had front end loaders come and take it out.
Okay.
So that's how we
you would have
accomplish
a
that. In
contract,
fact, I do that in a lot of my small plazas, that's actually how my rentals work in
and
my
that would be
parking lot.
incorporated in this project?
With the condo association when the condo association is put together, they're going to be the ones that's going to have to hire the landscaper and the snow removal. So it will be in it'll be in the condo docs.
Okay.
It will be addressed in the condo.
All of your board of trustees, and they'll take a vote, and, and you give a contract, almost like the borough. So you have like a mayor and council.
Is that possible, council?
I think the applicant has basically said our condo documents are going to
Yeah,
happen.
we have no problem as far as the landscaping, and we have no problem as far as the landscaping and snow removal as part of whoever the condo
You
association
should make
hires.
that a condition of the approval, and I think the applicant said, sure. no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Not a problem.
I believe the planner has it.
Thank you. Christine Bell, Borough Planner. Just based on the applicant's testimony about potential tenants in the commercial space, I would recommend you choose to act favorably on the application. Just perhaps putting in a condition that, there would be no storage of kind of like a fleet vehicle or a commercial vehicle associated with the, tenants in the commercial spaces on site, that they would be used for visitors, and not for, you know, the storage of a delivery truck or something like that.
Yeah, that
Makes sense, yeah.
And again, we would like time spots, we like 30-minute parking, or an hour, whatever the board feels warranted for those spaces, so especially from 9 to 6, because you would want that available for people coming and going.
Those along Main, you're
Main and 6,
Main
and
is
they're all
already
out
in, Main
6.
is already in, this will be on the 6th.
Yeah, we wouldn't mind putting that on 6th Avenue either, because, again, it's not where you would want employees parking or residential people parking all day. You really want it for the public.
Yes, I mean, as I said, the applicant has already indicated, it was in the developer's agreement that there's a 30-minute limit between 9 AM to 6 PM on the Main Street. The applicant is now saying they are amenable to the same types of conditions with regard to 6th.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, two more, and maybe this is not the best time, is I possibly should have asked it last week. They're just environmental related questions, one's about stormwater, one's, you're there, okay, all right. So the stormwater, I know you had the recharge, you had 2 of the recharge system tanks for the stormwater. And I think one was placed kind of in the middle of the property, between the buildings, and then the other one was underneath the buffer zone, I believe.
Yes.
Is that correct? And I think last week during the public portion, and I understand that the 25-foot buffer is a lot more pervious than there's there already. Is there a reason to have the second recharge tank in that underneath the 25-foot buffer, or could it be placed in the middle just to put a little more distance between them and the neighboring?
We believe in trying to comply with the Seaport redevelopment regs, is to try to get all our utilities underground. And similar at Westport, the electric was done underground and gone to the front of each of the units. So combine that with gas and the sewer that's in the street, because everything will go to the sewer. It seemed that the buffer zone, the area behind it, and again, the only thing that's going to be draining in that is really realistically going to be coming from the rooftop, because again, it's not coming from the road. So you have one roof that's a little over 5,000 square feet that the rain's going to, it's not a ton of water that's going to be going into that one that's in the buffer zone at all. But again, if we get a really bad rain, it'll be more on the ground than would be in that tank.
Yeah. I think what I was, which one is this? Doug, do you know which, this is the grading, drainage, and utility plan. I think what I'm looking at is how the first dry well is underneath the driveways of the front building.
Yes.
And I think what I was asking is there a way to put this other dry well underneath those driveways just to get it away from this lot and this house?
Well, according to Dan Caruso, the engineer, it's all based on the utilities, the other utilities, and whether you can physically fit everything in that zone. That's why the second one was put in the rear of the building.
Oh, you said 2 questions, I heard you, you said 2
I did. My other one was not to do with the dry wells. The other one was I think the environmental report referenced an investigation that was done in like 2006. Is there's no reason to be concerned with it being, 15, 20 years old, I guess the circumstances are not gonna change, or?
What's the question?
I guess my question is there any reason to be concerned that the environmental report was done in 2006 rather than more recently?
Well, no, as far, no, we had no concern with that.
And basically, if I could, because the site exists today the way it was back in 2000.
There's been no changes.
Yeah.
Through the chair, Jim Morris, I believe that the applicant submitted an environmental impact statement dated December 12th, 2023.
Yeah, that report referenced.
We actually have a phase 1 and phase 2 that were done in the last 3 years.
Okay.
So we have updated phase 1s and phase 2s, because I had to do a phase 1 when we purchased the Acropolis, and at the same time, I had them extended to the whole site. So I purchased the Acropolis in February, a year and a half ago, or a year ago. So basically, we had one then done fall of '22.
Okay.
So we do have environmental reports.
Through the chair, again, Jim Morris, while it references a prior report, for the record, Mr. Counselor, this report reflects current conditions on the site, or will we need information from your environmental consultant?
No, it does reflect it, yes.
Okay. So, well, I understand, as the applicant, you're stating that
Just
it
one
does.
second.
Sorry, it was back and forth.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll leave it to the discretion of our board attorney or the board, but I'm not sure that the applicant can testify to the validity of the environmental report prepared by your environmental consultant. While I understand you have an opinion.
I agree with the engineer's observation.
So that's why I was asking the attorney if he has knowledge of the report, and you have the ability to have the applicant's environmental consultant provide.
If you want to testify, unless it was raised normally in reports, we don't bring the environmental consultant down. We don't have the environmental consultant.
Understood. I'm not saying that you should have, I'm just saying we have a board member that's raised a question, and that question should be answered appropriately, that's all.
The question is, do we feel comfortable with the 2006?
In essence, that's what was the question. He felt as though the report information was dated. We were under the assumption that your professional did his due diligence in preparing this report, and not solely relying on a report that was from 2006. That's the way we interpreted the report. I'd like to be clear for the record that this report dated 2023 is accurate and current.
I believe it is. Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
Just to be clear, there were no environmental concerns in the most recent phase 1 and phase 2.
No, again, we know on site there are some sand-filled tanks from back when that one was there. Ollie Klein was an employee there. He actually, at the time, filled sand. We know they have to be removed, and they'll all be removed by state standards.
Of course. All right.
We agreed to that last time.
Perfect. Yep. That's all the way around.
Brett, do you have anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay. Given that, I guess we'll open up
You know about the public, sure.
the public
I think the opposite indicated they've gone as far as they can tonight for their testimony.
Are you,
And I
I
also.
should confirm that. Are you finished with your testimony this evening?
Correct. And I would also, I would make the argument, if the board wants to bring the planner in, we'd be happy to bring the planner in. You're going to listen to the typical testimony from C1, C2. Personally, I think you have a developers agreement. The downsizing of the units appear to be consistent with the developers agreement. This is a special area of town. Street, especially the C2, because this is a special zone. We've attempted to comply. We reduced, as both your engineer and your planner said, we did reduce the size of the building consistent with the pro rata parking that's in the agreement. If you do want planning testimony, we can bring somebody in next month. You don't have it right now. I don't think you're going to need it, but if you think you do, you do.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open it up for public comment, and when you come forward, please, Doug, I'll let you do it.
I'll just ask anyone who comes forward to state your name, spell your last name for purposes of the record. We're open to the public. Come on forward, come on down.
My name is John Rubel, and I live on 6th Avenue. There was much discussion about summertime traffic and safety and parking, but it goes beyond the summertime. This is a special area here because of the school and the times for pickup and drop-off and the parking for teachers, administrators, etc. So as the board reviews the plan as it's revised now, you may not, the trip generation manual, 11th edition, may not reflect the uniqueness of this corner. So I would implore you folks to just think about that before any final decision is made. Thank you.
Thank you.
Question?
You have a question? You got a question?
No. Is this my question?
Both. It's both. It's open to the public. This is the part where the public get to decide how they want to participate.
I'm Robin McGovern, M-A-G-O-V-E-R-N, and I am the buffer house. So I am the first house next to the organized chaos. And my neighbor said, we heard summer over and over and over again. Summer isn't our concern. September to June is our concern. There are over 350 children in St. Rose Grammar School. So there aren't a couple cars picking up and dropping off. There's numerous cars every day, along with CCD on Monday and Tuesday nights, along with a high school right through the parking lot. You are proposing angled parking, parents park, double park on our street, morning, afternoon, and those angled spots are going to be pulling into children. Evelyn Seafood Restaurant years ago proposed a driveway, which all of you shot down because there are children. The teachers park every day. We don't have spots on our street. There's 14 homes between Main Street and East Street, and not all of those homes have driveways. We can't park in the street ourselves because of staff and parents. And we have high school staff. And we have events in the evening. Parking is a major issue on 6th Avenue. And angled parking, like I said, is going to be a nightmare. Having parents driving down that street and cars pulling out of angled spots during pickup is a nightmare. Summer is not a problem for us. September to June is a huge problem for all of us.
Thank you.
Dave Wolf, W-O-O-L-F, 6th Avenue, 602. My question is about the catchment system, the dry wells. Are these dry wells that are going to store rainwater runoff from the roofs of 2 buildings? I assume each building is 5,000 square feet of roof, I don't know. Is that catchment system going to hold that and contain that, or is that catchment system going to contribute to the already rising groundwater that's flooding residents' basements? Can they make a promise to everyone, or will it? I have no idea. The catchment system is my concern. Traffic system and safety is also my concern. as it was lightly put, that we have a disorganized traffic zone, and then you're either speaking of the commercial traffic, which is going to be limited for daylight hours. You're not talking about the other 28 cars that are coming and going from the condo at any time of the day. Since COVID, you don't know if those 28 cars are going to be going out and back and forth to work. You have no idea. It's just a combination of traffic from the commercial and the proposed residential in a unique microcosm of the borough. Right now, it's affecting area, 5th, 6th, and 7th Avenue. When you're getting parking, we have people that are employees of the stores, and they're parking on residential streets. So it is a unique situation. I urge you to consider both. Thank you.
One question, we've got one question and one comment.
I don't know if anybody else.
No, I'm just saying.
Do you want to answer that part of that question?
I believe there's a question about dry well.
Dry wells.
Yeah.
Well, based on the existing conditions, it was
Just identify yourself.
Dan Caruso, the engineer. Under the existing conditions, the impervious coverage was in the 90%, and just in our proposal, we're reducing it into the 70s. So we're just generally adding more grass areas to reduce the runoff, to meet the general standards, and requesting the engineer to capture the roof and infiltrate it, which is basically what we've done.
I think the question from the public was, how does that system work? Is it going to contribute to perhaps?
Yeah.
Well, the system basically captures the water.
Well, first of all, let me just ask you this. There is no stormwater management system on this property at all. It's basically a building in one big parking lot.
At the present time, yes.
And post-development,
we're proposing to capture the roof, infiltrate that portion of the site into the ground. If there's basins over time, or if there was a higher storm, there are outlets that will discharge into the street sewer system. So it's designed to capture the 1 and 2 year storm in the general design.
The street sewer system, the street sewer system is above ground on 6th Avenue. There's nothing to carry it away from our homes.
That continues to be Mr. Walton.
Correct.
he said the streets,
6th Avenue.
and 6th Avenue is a problem.
The storm drain is not in the ground on 6th Avenue. The rainwater runs on the street.
We're tying into storm inlets in the street, so I'm not sure what you're referring to.
My concern as I spoke was, will your catchment system possibly raise water levels that will infiltrate basements in the area?
Well, based on our calculations of the modeling and everything, it's...
Did you calculate since September of 2023 when?
We got 13 inches of rain in 7 days and
Okay,
flooding.
folks, it's got to be one person at a time, or stand up and just ask your question.
Just trying to find out, Dave Wolf again, just trying to find out how this system may or may not impact residents' homes.
Like I said, based on our soils analysis and design, it's infiltrating into it. There's no evidence of water table that our, study has come up with that should, will be effective. So it's all hypothetical design,
It's a hypothetical. question, you're putting in a hypothetical neighborhood. Thank you.
I mean, you know, we're collecting the stormwater from this district, distributing across the street and impacting overland. We're, you know, infiltrating it into the ground system.
Thank you.
Where it's supposed to be.
Jackie Harper, 6116. So with the stormwater, I would just tag on to my Jad's question. He's at 602. In September, the end of September, we got pretty historic rainfall where we got 8 inches in 24 hours. Was that part of the calculation for what can be contained in the catchments and the dry wells? Like that level of rain?
That design is to carry, is designed to capture the 2-year storm, which is the 3-inch storm. So you're in the 100-year storm, which all these systems are designed for that. So it's, you know, we're designing it for the lower storms, which is what it's, you know, which it'll work for.
Not for the large ones.
The higher storms are.
Which are becoming way more frequent than 100-year storms.
And that's in every storm system in the state, that same.
Right, but you're not accounting for that, you're accounting for the small.
This is designing for the smaller storms, which is
Meeting to requirement, okay. So my other question would be to more of the seaport redevelopment and the requirements that are put on all these developers. Why are there only 2 parking spaces required? When we know being a destination or in your own personal homes, you probably have more than 2 people visiting and or living there with vehicles. Where does that number come from?
I think as the planner had said, this is part of the.
I understand, but I'm asking where that was calculated from to them.
The plan was written almost 25 years ago.
Okay.
And that's what was decided on at the time.
So since there's been numerous new developments that have been put in according to these regulations, right, from 25 years ago, and we've seen countless examples where there's not enough parking provided. 10th Avenue, it comes to mind, Bank, all of those runoff cars, right, it happens in every one of these developments. So why has there not been a revisit to what those regulations are? Especially when we're looking at a project that has so much more at stake, meeting the traffic and the flow, than those other locations. Is that something that's gonna happen, or is that something that's just the residents deal with it? Or if you feel that that's sufficient parking, are you going to do something for the residents to prove that you believe 2 spaces is enough? Like, do we get permit parking for our homes, so we have somewhere to park?
Doug, where does that?
It is a wonderful question. It's an intelligent question. In terms of what the board can do, the board is obliged to follow the statutory criteria and the rules and regulations as to should it be revamped. On occasion, we have an opportunity once every 10 years or so to take a look at the master plan. I will tell you, sitting here a long time, real long time, repeatedly in each master plan, there has been a call out for a need for better parking for everything from, at one point in time, raised multi-tiers. They've not come about. The answer is we still have to continue to fight with it. The other answer is for some folks, as one person said, it's not the problem in the summer season.
No, it's not, and that's why it's a little
At one point in time, parking was only a problem in the summer season.
Right,
I think what we're seeing now is, I'm trying to be sympathetic, my answer is our system of ordinance revamping is not perfect. We're going to have to continue to go after it, because now, we used to say you drive through after the shoulder seasons, there's lots of parking. That's not so anymore.
It's not. Also the other impact that I think is getting glossed over or dismissed is that as just the nature of everyone is changing, right? We see lower percentages of people belonging to religious organizations, aka St. Rose. They have closed numerous Catholic schools, but they're leaving this one open, which means there are more parents traveling from further away and driving. It's not just a small blip. I live next door. I'm come to often by the police department for videos of issues with the children, issues with the parents, hit and runs. So you're gonna add 14 homes and resident or commercial space. Already we see an issue with employees parking, and you cavalierly said the parking spaces aren't for the employees. Where do they park? Because the municipal lot used to be pretty open, and now there's all numbered spaces for police or for the borough. Where are those people going? Or where are those employees parking? Because it's gonna be in front of my house, Robin's house. Already, the folks from the Fifth Avenue project are parking on our block. So, I would imagine they can't park in the 30-minute spots, and you're saying they're clearly not meant to, so where do they go? And I do think that's a problem on the developer for not providing ample parking for the commercial business and the people who are going to staff it. No one goes back
I do not have the answer to your
projects
question.
once they're approved. You approve them, and then everybody drops it. The school was approved when people walk to school. Everyone drives now. Even you drive your kids to school. You drive a big black truck with your name on it.
I'm driving kids to school.
Or you pick them up. You pick them
That's
up.
not picking up the softball team, that's it.
But there's just, the people who live in town are driving to get their children. It's a very different time than it was before. That's my point, is that I think having someone be very dismissive, who's a traffic expert, not actually have done a car count or done a true impact on what this block is and what the impact is of the environment, of the traffic and the safety needs, I think is something that's pretty telling that you really don't care about the residents here. You're very quiet on your block, and that's very nice for you, but it's a huge impact what you're proposing, and I think that all should be considered. And the master plan, or what's required for parking spaces, truly has dramatically changed. I drove my husband to the airport 2 weeks ago, and at 9:30 on a Wednesday or Tuesday, I couldn't legally park my car within 2 blocks from my house. I had to parallel park and block my own driveway in, because my husband was in, his brother was on the trip with him, so, and the school was in session, obviously. So adding all of those people does not seem feasible. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public? Seeing none,
Close that public portion.
close the public portion of the
What is the applicant's pleasure as far as the continuation of the application?
All right, well, we'd like to proceed. If the board wants plain testimony, could you let us know, or is it possible to do that?
Well, sure. Let me make the following comments. The board has no obligation to produce any evidence for you, other than what the applicant presents for you. If you believe it would be helpful to hear the C1 and C2 criteria, how it's balanced, that would require the planner's testimony to come forward from the applicant. As I say, the board is not obliged to make the applicant's case in that instance. If you feel it would be helpful to hear from a planner in regard to this application as to how the proceedings at C1 and C2, the comments made by council along the lines of C2 referring to the developers agreement. If you'd like to hear a planner tie those things together so that the proofs are there, I don't know that we've had a discussion concerning those criteria at this point in time. If that's going to be helpful, talk amongst yourselves, let the applicant know.
Should we take a recess?
But
Discuss that, or
you can have,
you want
this is a discussion you can have on this record. At this point in time, we would just close the public portion, close the portions, and go from there.
I personally do not see it.
Should we just go to the comment section and see how that?
Sure.
How that takes us?
Sure.
And with the comment section, can we get a summary of the variance and conditions? Would that now be the time for that?
Now would be the time for that.
That'd be great.
Sure. As we wish for you. regard to the materials in the engineer's report, Mark, site layout, underground electrical utilities. The applicant has provided information concerning the agreement to provide a masonry structure for the trash enclosure. The applicant agreed that they will, well, we've had discussion concerning the site triangle. They provided the site triangle. Now they're going to provide some discussion concerning how they're going to pull the loading and bus section out of the site triangle. Going through the things that the applicant's already done. The applicant, I don't know if the applicant addressed this, but there is a mailbox on the existing condition, plans. Applicant will provide testimony concerning the relocation of the mailbox.
Yeah, we went through that.
I think you agreed to do that.
Yes.
The applicant with regard to site drainage, items number 13 through 24, which address providing the dry well system, agreed to address all the conditions with regard to drainage and condition and grading and drainage. Those are according to the stormwater runoff matters. The stormwater report says no infiltration is used. Storm tech drains are within 24 hours as shown in storm report. There was absolutely no objection to any of the conditions 16 through 24 on the drainage and grading plan. The applicant agreed to do that. Applicant agreed to do all items on 25 through 34. As we read these into the record, then we probably will go through all items. We have that report here. We'll take the report items 24 through 34. Item 35, they agreed to do with regard to the connections for the water line. They agreed to install the new 8-inch deductible iron water main from Main Street to the Main Street boundary of the property. They agreed that they would take care of the line valve at the eastern boundary of the water main extension to facilitate future connection. They agreed to basically items 34 through 42 concerning water and sewer supply design. There were no objections to any of those items, items 35 through 45. They've committed to having air conditioning units on the roof, and there's not going to be a habitable area there. They have revised their lighting plans to ensure that there's no spillage of site lighting along residential properties. They have agreed to no balconies on the rear facade of the 6th Avenue building. They have agreed, I think we placed this language in, they have agreed, number one, to consult with the Shade Tree Commission and also abide by the engineer's recommendations by way of plantings. The Shade Tree Commission primarily for plantings on Main Street, for consultation and compliance with the engineer's recommendations concerning plantings in the buffer area, appropriate types of plantings, primarily focusing on mature plantings there rather than something like a seed. They agreed to comply with all conditions of approval by way of outside agencies, Mountain Planning Board if necessary, Water and Sewer Department if necessary, New Jersey DOT road opening permits, all items listed as conditions of approval, item number 5, items 1 through 13. In addition, applicant has agreed, as they testified to again this evening, to limit the bedroom count to 3. They have made the revisions with regard and agreed to the deed restriction with regard to those matters. They have agreed and actually submitted the revised drawings to remove the walls that we discussed before to limit the areas downstairs so that they don't become bedrooms. The applicant has agreed that garages will principally be used for parking of vehicles. The applicant has agreed that they will carry, in fact, have shown the documents this evening, that they will carry those design elements from the Main Street streetscape around the side of the building, the Sixth Avenue side, so that they would present a more architecturally desirable facade. The applicant has agreed that to the extent that they can, that they're going to be removing much of the gravel, putting green grass areas. You notice we had some gravel areas between green grass there. We've had a discussion concerning the placement of dry wells to capture roof runoff, and also that there's going to be inlets at the front of Eastport Lane. Variance relief is for 7 spots. The applicant has agreed to a time limit of 30 minutes, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. both on Main Street as well as 6th Avenue. Applicant should comply with the affordable housing requirements, whether they're making a contribution or however that's arranged. The applicant agrees that the condo documents once drafted will provide for maintenance of the areas, maintenance by way of landscaping, maintaining the landscaping as well as snow removal. The applicant has agreed that there's not going to be any storage of fleet vehicles on site. As I said, I think I said before, the applicant will make an effort to remove the utility pole on Main Street. Again, I think the hesitancy for the applicant at that point in time was, you know, we can ask and ask and ask, and we'll document that we're asking and we're supporting that removal, but we can't physically take down the pole as long as the pole understands that. You've seen the wall detail. The applicant has agreed that they're not seeking any variance for commercial signage. We don't intend to have any other signage other than placed on the building for the commercial side. Similarly, they're going to document, as I said before, they're going to document the letter to the post office with the location of the post office box. Separate metering for each one of the facilities. The flat roof parapet, the applicant has agreed that that's only going to be for mechanical use only. There's not going to be any other types of structures on top. The AC units will only be accessible by way of a hatch. It's not going to be a stairway or a walkway up there. The applicant is again committed that this evening is going to comply with ERC requirements by way of the colonial type design, also pavers except for the driveway area, which will have to be asphalt. I believe that there was also discussion that with regard to, in addition to street lighting not leading into the residential areas, they were also going to be placing recessed fixtures on the residential areas, so again, so primarily continue on site. You'll say that's all I have at this point in time, and then before people jump in and say, what about? So if there's something else that you want to see, those are the principal conditions I have. As I said, I've gone through, I think most of the planning requirements, most of the planning comments the applicant agreed to.
Doug, I just have.
Fire away, Bridget.
They agreed to provide a completed
Sustainability, yes.
checklist.
Yes, I agree.
I just have one comment. As far as the signage, we agree to comply with some tenant, thinks they need a bigger sign, will have to come to the board.
Yeah, you're not seeking any signage variance. I think Mr. Tabacco made that very clear. If somebody else wants to do that, they can do that. But, you know, they got to make their proofs.
Correct.
So our only actual variance is the 7 spots.
The actual variance this evening is, I mean, there's some design waivers, obviously, listed, that's what we've come, that's mostly what I've been discussing. The variance this evening, I think they are down to the 7 spaces that we're going to grant. Before we had that discussion, maybe it's 5, maybe it's 7, but granted, we're seeking a variance for 7 parking spaces at this site.
Without the variance, how many parking spaces would there be? I'm really confused. So,
The testimony has been, there were 5, it's 11 on 6th Avenue, there were 2, it's now 4 on Main Street, but in terms of the net variance that they need, is 7 spaces for the commercial use. They don't need any variance for the residential component of this. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
and the parking spaces for the commercial use and residential use, they're separate?
I've separated them for purposes of this discussion. It's an entire net calculation that includes both residential and commercial. What has been presented to you this evening is the way which is done with a limited number of bedrooms for the residential, and the calculation of the spaces with regard to the component of the garage and driveway. They have complied with the requirements for the residential. For the commercial, they're shy. They are permitted, and as was discussed before, they're permitted to use a combination of on-site, which they do not have, street parking, which they have some of, but not enough to comply with the square footage of the commercial. The reason why the commercial kind of shifted and changed was because from the time they had the developer's agreement to the time that they're here now tonight, the commercial space is actually shrunk. But in terms of variance relief that they're proceeding, depending on what they do with the loading zone, moving it, and what happens with those spaces that were sort of ahead of that, if they are going to do what their traffic engineer has said they were going to do, which was get the loading and the bus stop out of the site triangle area, that will impact, and that may take it from, say, maybe what's 5 at this point in time to 7 spaces they need. They're requesting 7 variance spaces, primarily, not for the commercial. Okay.
Is that it then?
What's that?
Or-
I think that's it. I tried to be as thorough as I could as the conditions.
All right, board members with your comments, you can also weigh in on,
We need to hear planning testimony.
right. Okay, and with that, Linda, we'll start with you.
I think it's a beautiful application. I think we need to take into consideration it was much larger and they reduced the size of it. We have aesthetically pleasing buildings that they tried to meet the need for parking. In Belmar, we have a problem with what's considered public parking because for years they've given it away for every building that's gone up. Oh, we need parking, well, here's a public parking lot. Well, we've reached a point, there's none of those left. So the shortage of parking to me is, in the grand scheme of things, insignificant. As a resident on 4th Avenue, I walk, a lot of people walk, you walk down 5th Avenue, it's a great walk in the summer. I think it's important for us to have more developments of this scale. It's only 3 stories, not 4 or 5. And with that, if we come to a vote, I'm in favor of this application.
You need to hear planning testimony. Would you benefit from hearing a planner's testimony?
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay.
I personally do not see the need to hear any planning testimony. As far as the application is concerned, I appreciate the limited density of the project. I welcome the ratables for the borough. I think it benefits us all. And overall, I support the project. One thing that I want to talk about, which is kind of outside of the application itself, but since the mayor does sit on our board, I think we do need to talk about it, because it's overwhelmingly coming from the public, is St. Rose itself, and the need for improvement, to improve enforcement of traffic infractions that are related to St. Rose, and maybe possibly working with St. Rose, working with the chief of police to create a more cohesive plan and for pickup, drop-off in that area. That's the only thing that I'll ask for if that is something that you find value. But outside of the project, I appreciate the project, I appreciate the greater goal, and I really appreciate the density. It's nothing, it's perfectly acceptable.
Hey, Mike, was it?
Yep.
Also with the plan testimony, I don't think it's necessary. I think they've covered everything in the comments and the reviews. Just repeating the density, to have a property of this size and to come forward with a limited 14-unit development, full residential parking, which is also compliant for any single-family home, 3 bedrooms, two parking spaces. That's what's required. Limited, peak travel distances, things like that. To come with something this size and to come with one variance is commendable to your application. And it's commercial parking. It's actually required because you're repositioning existing parking spaces that are in front of your property now. So I discount the fact that that's what they're needed for. I can go on about St. Rose. I've been there. I've been on the safety committees. I've been there with Chief Scott. We've made a lot of changes. They utilize 7th Avenue now. They put up signs on the street right in front of your house that you wouldn't be allowed to park, actually aren't allowed to park in front of your home from 7 to 8 a.m. or 7 to 7:30. If they enforced that, you would get a ticket every single day. So that's from St. Rose all the way to Main Street on the south side of the block. So I don't think that's something that should get enforced, but it's there. So I think other forms of work, I'm sure we've been through it all. They've done significant improvements, and I don't think 7 peak morning travels from 7 to 9 a.m. are going to significantly impact that road in general. Drainage significantly improved from where it's at now. Relieving the storm sewer systems from what they're doing, going from 100% impervious to, I think, 70. But in that 70, 30%, 40% is the building being captured in itself. So that's a significant relief on the actual drainage impact of that property to this town, including your property. So I believe that's, again, a big improvement. You guys have done a great job. I'm in favor of this application. Paul?
Yes. Few things. First of all, note to the planner's testimony. Our task here in the on this planning board is to follow the rules, follow the master plan. Master plan was put together by the council, the people that are re-elected, so we have a say in what went into the master plan. We also have a redevelopment plan, which this project comes into. And there are ordinances with the redevelopment plan, so it's tough to see some of the stuff, but we have laws to follow, and those are in the ordinances of the redevelopment plan. That's our task. So, and this man has a right to, and people, whoever's the owners of it, have a right to build. We just can't say no. We'll wind up in court, and the state will come down on us and say, you can't deny somebody owns a property to develop his property. You can't do that. So for those reasons, given the fact that I'm following the redevelopment plan, which also comes from the master plan, and the fact that he's allowed to develop his property, I think everything considered, what he's tried to do, accommodated him in what he's tried to do, I'm going to vote for it.
I don't need to see further testimony from the planner, because it would be
repetitious here, but when I originally looked at this space, I'm thinking it's just gonna be a lot bigger. But I think it's unique enough looking. It's checking off every box that you can possibly check off. And it's always gonna be complicated with parking, and it's just the nature of our town. I have great empathy for the people that disagree with that, because they have wildly and tremendously valid points. I think that if we don't approve this, it almost says that nothing can be built, because you're always going to run into the same objectives. I think the parking solution can't be, for Belmar, needs to be other spaces that are currently open and available, but that's not what we're doing here with this effort. I would be in favor of it and pray that it doesn't mess up what in essence is already traffic flows and safety and so on. But thank you for your attention to detail.
Yeah, I also think it's a nicely prepared, and aesthetically pleasing development. I'm still hung up on parking. I disagree. The lot, the property next to it, I mean, you can see is practically about the same size, depth, width. Yeah. They have on-site commercial parking, they have on-site residential parking, and they're able to make it work, and they have the diagonal parking. Just north of that, another development also has on-site commercial and residential parking. So this site, I don't understand why, and it had not been explained why we can't put on-site commercial parking here to help alleviate some of the parking issues particularly on 6th Avenue. As far as the stormwater retention and the sustainability building package, that's building permit requirements were not supplied. The stormwater retention, I like the idea of capturing, and I appreciate the reduction in the runoff. However, I think what the resident was talking about was that, well, that runoff is going to drop down into the ground and potentially into their, further exacerbate the problem in their basements. So the question that was asked is, can we move that and relocate it? And other than being a cost issue of moving some utilities, I don't see why you can't do it. So I am not in favor of the current, particularly because of the parking and the traffic study. I mean, you have a textbook saying that it doesn't meet certain criteria to do a full-blown study, but I mean, the residents have testified on 2 separate occasions that the traffic is an issue, and it's exacerbated by the school, and then you also have the seasonal impact. So I think that a traffic study, a detailed traffic study, and parking, that includes parking, should be considered. So for those reasons, I would say no, I'm not in favor.
Thank you. Councilman?
I do not need testimony from the planner. On the surface, this looks like a great design. It's nice to see a design come forward that's not, 4 or 5 stories tall. 3 stories is within the Seaport redevelopment plan. The density is good. I'm concerned with the commercial parking. I hear from a lot of businesses in town asking, why do we have these time limits for parking? And it varies based on the type of business, but not knowing what type of business can go in there, all we're doing is exasperating the problem if we continue to keep granting variances for not having enough commercial parking. Commercial parking is important. I think this lot is big enough to be able to do both without jeopardizing the project density, and for that reason, I'm against it.
Mr. Mayor?
I guess I'm next. I don't need a planner.
Thank you.
A few things. I'm not thrilled, to be perfectly honest with you. The project is fine, but 3 things I've written down here that are directly related to the plan is the number 1 problem I have is safety. I think I don't really know, quite frankly, what the developer could have done about this, but it is a very, very heavily traveled block, as we all know. The school is there. bonus. Somebody mentioned St. Rose. I'm very disappointed that St. Rose hasn't taken any positive action through all the years to provide parking for their teachers and whatever. And I hope someone from St. Rose is listening. They had a beautiful piece of property on 8th and Main, you know, which they probably made millions on. And, you know, and again, they did nothing, so what happens? The burden falls on the town, okay? And that's going to be the theme of my comments. The burden is falling on the town, all right? There's a school there now, and, you know, we have angle parking, and that's going to be a safety issue. And who does that burden fall on? It falls on the town. So, you know, what are we going to do? Are we going to have police there now, you know, more hours during the day to direct traffic? I mean, we already closed off the street. I don't even know if there's an ordinance to do that, but we're just doing it. But, you know, that's a hassle, because half the time you turn down 6th Avenue, you don't realize the street's closed until you're there. So now you're backing up. So again, that's another burden for the town. I'm less concerned about the commercial parking, but because I don't think that 3,000 square feet is going to generate that much traffic unless it's too small to have something that's like a store, like a food store, or someplace with a pizza place, or someplace where there's going to be high traffic. So I'm hoping that's not going to be an issue there. But I've never been a fan of angle parking, but that seems the way things are going. But I do think it's a safety issue, and, you know, thankfully they have provided 2 spaces for each apartment. And unfortunately, to the residents, I have to tell you, the trend for parking is going the other way. The trend throughout the whole country and through the state is, you know, it's averaging around two spots per unit. It's going the other way. They're looking at like 1.5 spots or whatever. So we're never going to see 3. I'm telling you right up front, you're never going to see 3 spots per unit. It's not going to happen because there's not enough space. And again, that's a burden on the town. You know, when something gets built and it doesn't have enough parking, the town feels the burden of that. Because even with 2 parking spots, some people have 3 cars. You know, some people have 4 cars. And, you know, I think the trend in the country that has, you know, it has gone towards do everything by car. You know, we don't have mass transit hardly anymore. Everybody goes from one place to the next using the car. And, you know, we're our own worst enemies. You know, we have cars, more and more cars. Even people who have single-family homes have 3, 4 cars. So, you know, it's a problem that we have to deal with, and it's not the car so much, but it's the parking of those cars, especially when you're dealing with a multi-unit home or townhouses like that. So parking is always going to be an issue, and my prediction is, you know, unless we, again, burden on the town, unless we do something, it's going to get worse. Okay, so I'm not going to paint a rosy picture. Right? It's definitely going to get worse as more and more developments come in. Okay, so that's again something the town and the taxpayers are going to have to deal with. I'm concerned about as you were before, about the water system, about you know, I have to think, just common sense, if the water's going down into a dry well, that dry well is moving water through the you know, underground, and it's gonna just go through, you know, other people's homes. That's just the way it is. We don't know what the water table is. I get water in my basement. It just comes up from the bottom, you know. It's not water coming from the top. It's water coming from below. So now what we're doing is we're creating a system where we're taking water from the top and we're putting it underground, added to the groundwater. So it's going to, you know, my sense is, you know, you're going to see problems, I think, with the basements flooding because of that. And other than that, I'm not, you know, I don't know that many of the questions were answered directly. I understand, you know, especially like with the water issue, you know, and the traffic issue, it's all very loose, and, you know, well, it could be this, it could be that, oh, we have this standard, we have that standard, but, you know, it's all, it's really not dealing with the issue at hand. So, you know, again, I think it's a nice project. Unfortunately, I think it's not in a great spot in terms of, again, the safety to the residents, parking for the residents. They're already under tremendous burden for parking in that area. And, you know, I'm very conflicted as to what to do. I think I'm going to abstain at this point.
Okay, I don't need to see testimony from the planner. I think we've covered all of that. Very eloquently put, Mr. Mayor. I can't add too much to that. The parking situation is what it is. I deal with it myself, and I travel 6th Avenue myself every morning, and I live on 6th Avenue by the lake. And I know that in the mornings when St. Rose is in session, I can't go all the way through. I've got to reroute. And in the afternoons, I choose not to reroute and pick up, you know, or not to come down 6. I reroute. And as long as you live here, you know that. So you know that you can't come down 6th Avenue one way or the other at certain times of the day. I live close enough to the beach that I had issues with parking. You know, I did have a concern with St. Rose, you know, the school there, but I think it's limited to an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, and I think that can be worked through without a whole lot of trouble. So I do appreciate everything that you guys did as far as trying to meet the accommodations or to accommodate the board. With that, I would probably be in favor of the application. I think Brett wanted to.
Sorry. I just have, I had like maybe 3 sticking points for me that make me hesitant. One was the stormwater and the dry well. I think maybe I didn't explain myself before as well as I probably could have. You know, right now with the impervious being 90-something%, all that water is running off into the street, and it's going into the stormwater, the town's stormwater management. I think if you are now capturing that water from the roof and from the grass buffer area and putting that into the ground to recharge, my concern with the dry well being only 8 or 9 feet away from the property line is that it's going to lead to basement flooding for the people next door primarily. So that's my concern with that, and I think that should be removed if possible. I think my other 2 concerns, one is, you know, all of this, all the parking problems get completely exacerbated if these become summer rentals. And I wish there was a way to ensure, either through the HOA or whatever, that they don't become summer rentals. My last concern is I saw, and this is an issue that I think I have with the redevelopment agreement, maybe not with, maybe it's not ours, but just generally. I saw in there that, you know, if the units don't sell after a year, they can be leased, I guess by the developer or the owner. So I think that you know, I don't know if that's standard, but that was a concern for me. And then finally, you know, I guess maybe all of that testimony is the same, but you know, I didn't hear anything about meeting the requirements, the criteria for a C1 or C2 variance. You know, that's, I guess, maybe it's the same every time. But,
goes back to the other question.
Yeah.
Benefit from doing it from the
Yeah. For me, yes.
So yes, you would benefit.
I would benefit, I think, I think if we're gonna issue a variance, which is basically bending the rules for somebody, I think we should at least hear why we should do that. That's it for me.
Vito, would you like me to frame a resolution?
Yes, if I understand this right, with the mayor abstaining, we have 9 members. Right?
We have a 9-member board. This evening, an abstention does not go with or without, it's a no vote. Ms. Sharkus will not be voting this evening, she's alternate number 2. Ms. Loomis is alternate number 1, so he will be voting.
The mayor is abstaining, but is that counts as a no?
Doesn't count either a no or a yes. It's a no vote. And by that I mean a non-vote. I keep exacerbating that same problem. It is a non-vote. In certain instances, an abstention goes with the majority. It does not in our count. All right?
Fine, I understand. Grant a resolution.
This is a resolution sought by Eastport LLC for the property located at 506 Main Street and 614 6th Avenue for Block 55, lots 9, 10, 12, and 13.02. This is for preliminary and final major site plans. The applicant is seeking relief by way of variance for parking. In this instance, they're going to be seeking a variance for 7 parking spaces, as we discussed before. I'm not going to spread upon the record all of the conditions that we did earlier, but they would be incorporated into a resolution for approval. The applicant this evening is seeking basically to demolish all existing structures on site of this property and then construct 2 separate buildings. One is completely residential, that's the rear building, if you will. One is a mixed commercial and residential building fronting on Main Street. Each unit will have, each building will be 3 stories. Each will have 7 residential units in it. The balance of the first floor on the Main Street building is going to be commercial. As I said, the conditions of approval have previously been put on or put into the record. They will be in as conditions for approval. Now, we have decided to go forward with this. A yes vote is a positive vote, an affirmative vote for this application.
Mr. Counsel, I have a question. You referenced, this has to do with procedure. You referenced that Linda Sharkus could not vote.
Correct.
I've been on an alternate member of this board for 8 years, and I have never, ever heard that I was never addressed as alternate 1 or alternate 2. My understanding was that if somebody was absent from the board, and somebody filled in, that person could vote. And if you were not up here, you could not vote. I don't know.
You're incorrect.
Huh?
That's incorrect.
That's
What
incorrect.
happens is we're down 1 member this evening. We're down 1 member. In that instance, we've had alternate 1 and alternate 2 sit in on the entire application. But in terms of voting, alternate 1 votes, alternate 2 doesn't, because otherwise I would have greater than a 9-member board. I don't have greater than a 9-member board in this instance.
Okay. I've never heard that. I just don't know why he's not sitting up here. She's down there.
He came late. That's the answer. He came late, and he didn't have a seat on the day. There was no design to be meeting.
First time hearing this.
That's okay.
The appropriate way, and I've been involved in this, is if I came in late and I was supposed to be sitting up here, we switch out.
And that didn't happen.
For the record, if I could just interrupt, because everybody's saying the gentleman was late. He just came in before After 7, but before the meeting started.
Exactly, you are correct.
all of the
You are
testimony.
correct, yes.
He heard all of the
But,
presentation.
yeah, that was a bad use of terminology on my part, yes. He was here before testimony.
He heard all the testimony, was here for that.
Yes, sir.
Through the chair. Having heard the recital for the resolution and knowing that the applicant really only needs the 5 parking spaces for the commercial space, it's probably more prudent to only issue the variance based on that, and clearly noting that the applicant is providing 15 parking spaces on street, whereby he's short 5, or he needs a variance for 5. I just want to make sure it's not somehow construed that residential, like I'd like the resolution to be clear.
I understand. I think we had a discussion before, and the applicant said, yes, go 7. I'm framing the resolution based on what the applicant wants. The applicant would like just only 5.
No, I think we discussed it just because there's some confusion about those weather variances.
I think what Jim is saying is he'd like the
I understand what
resolution
you're
to
saying.
state that they meet the residential requirement.
And I said that 3 times before.
They meet the residential requirement for parking.
Yes.
And they're going to provide 15 on-street parking spaces. I think that's correct. And that they are going to receive a variance for up to 7 parking spaces.
Right.
Up to. I just want to make sure that somehow or another, I don't want to see them wind up with less on-street parking than they've presented to this board this year.
Did that come, do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay, that was not clear. I agree with everything you said.
And I have a point of procedure. The way I'm counting heads, we have 10 board members up here now. The mayor's has said he's not going to vote. So I think we're entitled to 9 votes. 9 people voting rather than 8. It's a 9-member board, right? Unless I'm counting wrong.
It's a 9-member board.
Correct. And the mayor's abstains.
Right.
I think we're entitled to 9 votes. 9 voting members. Because it's a 9.
He is a voting member abstaining. I disagree with what you were saying. It doesn't mean he's not part of the board because he's abstaining.
Well, I don't think you can do that. Procedurally, I think that's against the law. I don't think you can.
I would suggest to you that we can. That would be my vote.
Okay.
But we haven't taken the vote yet.
We haven't taken a vote yet.
No, he already
I
abstained.
can change my mind.
He can change his mind.
I don't think he can change his mind if he said he abstains.
Why? I didn't vote.
You abstained. All right.
Vote.
That's my note on the record.
Any further discussion?
Any further discussion?
I got to go back to July 1st.
Shall we go to the vote?
Motion.
Motion to make, motion?
Motion?
Motion.
Motion.
Second?
Second by the chair.
Okay, Mr. Loomis?
I didn't hear any testimony about meeting the criteria for C1 or C2. Without that, I'm going to vote no.
Mr. Caponi?
Yes.
Mr. de Blasio?
Yes.
Mr. Meyer?
Yes.
Mr. Forte?
Yes.
Mr. Lindsay?
Yes.
Mr. Fierro?
No.
Councilman Levis?
No.
Mayor Buckles?
Yes.
That's 5 yes, 3 no, 1 abstain.
Carried.
All right, thank you very much.
We have other business?
Other business, not for, general. 5 minutes, it has to do with deciding work that we did.
Just an amendment. I request.
Folks, we're still in session. We're still in session.
Back up.
Thank you.
This stuff. He's got this handbook. These are signs. By definition, these are signs. They represent what the business sells. consider. I don't know what you call these particular signs, so I would like to request that you consider this type of stuff when you consider the sign ordinances. Look at some of those, they're really
Can I ask a question? Have you seen the sign, the image on top of the 801 is projected on top of where British Baker used to be? You see it from Route 35 when you're coming in at night. I don't know if that's a little holographic image or whatever.
That's something that is
Yeah.
I didn't see that, yeah.
Up there, it says 801.
Is that in the parking lot, looking at the building?
nice mark.
Yeah, if you're waiting for the light at the behind you, and you look up at night, you'll see, the first time I looked at it, I was like, what the heck is this thing? It's like this huge round circle, and it says 801, and it's for the store that's down on the thing. And I said, I don't even know if that's covered in our sign ordinance. But it's something that, I guess.
Is there something else from the sign?
Something that we at the council will have to look at. We'll have to look at that.
Do you rest your case on the?
I don't mind.
It's in evidence.
We technically open up to the public in case anyone wants to speak.
Yes. Anyone from the public?
Hearing none, seeing none.
All right, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Aye.